Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, November 19th, and we are gathered here with the Athens-Clarke County Mayor and Commission here in City Hall for two meetings this evening. We have a special called session with just two items that we need to conclude business on tonight, so we can get some contracts signed. And then we have our regularly scheduled agenda-setting session following that special called session. We'll go ahead and begin with a roll call from the clerk, as we always do.
Davenport.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Taylor. Wright.
Present.
Fisher.
Here.
Poole.
Here.
Culpepper.
Here.
Myers. Thornton.
Here.
Hamby. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. And we'll begin, as we often do, with our civility pledge that has been provided to us by the Georgia Municipal Association, where we have colleagues in more than 520 cities across the state. And that indicates that the way we govern ourselves is often as important as the positions we take, that our collective decisions will be better when differing views have had the opportunity to be fully vetted and considered, that all people have the right to be treated with respect, courtesy, and openness, and that we value all input and commit to conduct ourselves at all times with civility and courtesy to each other. All right, so we are here to consider two items that we have to conclude business on tonight, and so I do need a motion to suspend the rules.
So moved. Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Davenport and a second from Commissioner Fisher for suspension of rules. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public input on these two items of new business is essentially the same as you'll see throughout the evening tonight when we'll have public input on our agenda-setting meeting as well. So public input's provided at the podium. If you have a card, please make sure you fill that out and hand that to Attorney Drake, so that way we can accurately capture your name and place of residence. And that's the first thing I'll ask for. In your public input, you'll have up to 3 minutes. And you see the light in front of the clerk. It'll turn green when you begin speaking, yellow when you have 30 seconds remaining, and red when your 3 minutes is concluded. And I will thank you for your time with us tonight, and we'll need to quickly move on to other folks. So regarding the two items on the special called session, the amendment to the Reservoir Agreement and the community grant application, is there any public input tonight? All right, so first order of business is an amendment to the Intergovernmental Reservoir Agreement regarding the Bear Creek Reservoir that we have with the Coney County, Jackson County, and Barrow County. It's a routine item because those other counties I mentioned are about to go out to borrow some money, and so we need to ensure that ownership of the reservoir is going to continue in the long term. So do I hear a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Link and a second from Commissioner Houle. Any observations or questions? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Second is a community change grant application for $20 million from the EPA Community Change Grant Fund for renewable energy at the ACC Public Safety Campus on Lexington Road. So do I hear a motion for approval?
So move.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Link, and I have a second from Commissioner Davenport. Commissioner Link, any observations,
This is a
questions?
really exciting opportunity, and we can get closer to our 100% renewable goals.
Commissioner Davenport?
I did owe Commissioner Lane. This is pretty cool.
Any others? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing us to have this on the agenda at such late notice. There's been a couple of changes from the partner group that Mr. Saunders would like to speak to.
Sure. So the partnership agreement that's part of the grant comes to us starting as a bit of a template to work from. As we have moved to the closing line on this, our partners have asked for some changes that are different than what's published in there, and I just want to discuss them. Staff have reviewed this with the attorney's office, and we concur that these changes are appropriate. In Section 3, we'll be removing the words managing grants as a requirement of the partner, Southern Sustainability Institute. That's because we have structured this grant so that HCD and some of our grant specialist staff will be helping with that function. In Section 4.2-4, we'll be removing the word workforce development efforts, and that's because the grant will not be providing on-site training, but rather will be providing scholarships for those needs. In Section 10.1, we'll be changing the withdrawal notice from 120 days to 60 days. And then Section 11 clarifies the ownership of intellectual property. anything created collaboratively as a part of the grant is subject to disbursement. But if an outside partner shares some with our other partner, Southern Sustainability Institute, there will be some maintained confidentiality there.
Any questions about those components? All right, so I have a motion from Commissioner Link and a second from Commissioner Davenport. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. All right, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn upon conclusion of an executive session for the discussion of personnel matters that will happen following our agenda-setting session.
So moved. Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Wright, second from Commissioner Thornton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. All right, we're going to move on to our agenda-setting session. And the agenda-setting session is really comprised of sort of three elements. There is the consent agenda, which when we vote on December 3rd will be taken care of with a single vote. There's some individual planning and zoning items. We have 3 of those. And then we have old and new business, and those are items 11 through 22. At this point, I'd like to call any member of the public forth who would like to speak to the consent agenda, which are items 1 through 7. Is there anybody who would like to speak to any of those consent agenda items 1 through 7? And again, just please state your name, place of residence, and then you have 3 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Rupersberg. I live at 170 Virginia Avenue. I'm also the chairperson for the Boulevard Neighborhood Association, and I'd like to say some comments on behalf. We're here tonight to express our enthusiastic support for the recommended change to a 4-way stop at the intersection of Lyndon Avenue and Dubose Avenue. This intersection has been problematic for a number of years, and residents of our neighborhood have been raising the concern for just as long, including but not limited to submitting a TSPLOST proposal and working with the neighborhood traffic management program. Now, with the recent opening of the medical building on Chase Street, as well as the closure of an access street on Cohen Street, more cars are traversing Dubose Avenue and Lyndon Avenue, and more students and families are walking that way to reach Johnny Laybrick's elementary school. Unfortunately, this situation finally resulted in a car crash on September 10th during morning commute. We are pleased with the Planning Department's recommendation to make the change, and we hope you all will vote to support this change. We also want to recognize that the growth of our town is resulting in increased traffic pressures on in-town neighborhoods. Traffic calming and bike and pedestrian improvements are much needed in the vicinity of this intersection and along the Chase Street corridor between Oneida Street and Prince Avenue. We look forward to continuing to work with you in these areas, as we have recently along Barber Street and Prince Avenue. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Rupersberg.
Do I have any time left?
I believe you do.
All right. Well, I would also like to add, as an individual, speaking apart from my role as the chair for the Neighborhood Association, that the urgency of getting a stop sign at this intersection is greatly increased because we have a house that's being renovated nearby, and there's lots of construction vehicles there regularly. When they have their trailers there, you have to basically walk halfway out into the intersection to be able to see to cross the street. And because so many families are using this to get kids to school, it's just really an urgent issue, and I hope we can take care of it as quickly as possible. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to any of the consent agenda items? Again, those are 1 through 7 on the agenda. Would any commissioner like to remove an item from consent? Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I'll remove 2 just for a quick comment.
Yeah. Would anyone else like to remove one of the consent agenda items for discussion later in the meeting? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move to discussion of our 3 planning and zoning items. So I am going to move on down. We're going to lower the screen, and then Planning Director Bruce Lonnie is going to take us through those 3 items. All right, tonight technology is our friend. So, Bruce, what do you have for us first here as item number 8?
All right, so the first of the 3 zoning items that we have to present this evening is a special use permit request for 1300 US Highway 29 North. All of these items tonight were heard at the November 7th Planning Commission meeting, and those recommendations will be presented. The request in this case is to have a special use permit approved for an agricultural residential parcel. This is the first item of this sort to hear a special use for a short-term rental. The ask is to convert an existing residence to a short-term rental use as a commercial function, as opposed to the home occupation form of short-term rental. This commercial short-term rental was in operation before the new short-term rental ordinances were adopted. In that regard, it is legal non-conforming, but the owner is going through the exercise of moving off of the legal non-conforming list to be able to operate annually without any restriction other than that's in the ordinance. There's no change proposed to the site. It is a 1,300 square foot house. As noted by the applicant, they are proposing a maximum occupancy of 9 individuals. There are 2 rooms in the home, 2 queen beds and 5 twin beds have been noted as what's being provided. That was extra information for them. We don't ask for that, but they did provide that information. Code enforcement does have a case that's open for the property, but most of those issues have been resolved. There's a couple remaining issues. And actually, should the special use be adopted, approved, the remaining issue would be taken care of. So, location, north side of town. What you see in the lower left corner of the image is Athens Christian School. So this is a large tract of land that does not have direct frontage on Highway 29. You use a private access drive to get to this property. Inside that dashed, red and black dashed line, the rooftop that you see that's the largest, the white one, kind of in the southernmost reach of the property in the tree line, is a barn, and the house is in the clearing. The future land use is rural, and there's no change to that with this request. The zoning is agricultural residential, and again, that would not change with this request. It would just be for the special use to use the property as a commercial short-term rental. Here is the site plan as submitted by the applicant. They superimposed that aerial that we saw just a minute ago on top of a survey. And what you can see extending outward to the west is that kind of serpentine private access drive. If you had wanted to go visit the property prior to hearing it tonight, it's a tough one. You may drive past it really quickly and circle back. But there are a number of properties that share that access drive, and they were all made aware of this request. Here's an image of the structure. Planning Commission's recommendation, they found that it was compatible with the 2023 comprehensive plan, that it does meet the special use criteria, and they did express, and they wanted the outstanding code enforcement issue to be resolved prior to any continued use. So with that, there was an approval with a singular condition, and that condition is that the property must resolve any and all code enforcement cases prior to being able to obtain a business occupancy tax certificate and to commence any business operations. And I just want to be clear, I checked with code enforcement today. All of the permitting and structural issues have been resolved. All that remains is to complete this zoning action regarding the special use.
Thank you, Bruce. Is there any public input on this item? No public input. This is in Commission District 9.
Yes,
Commissioner Thornton?
I'm familiar with it. Commissioner Fisher, didn't we visit this property over a year ago? So have they changed their plan? Have you talked to
I
anybody?
have not talked to anybody out there. I don't. This is the first, when I got it last Friday, that's the first I've seen, so I don't, obviously they have.
Right now, I don't see any problems, especially with the conditions. It's like you said, if you not paying attention,
Yeah.
you're not going to see it. But yeah, I don't have no oppositions or questions at this point, Mr. Lonnie.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other questions or observations? Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I just wanted to check real quick. So the special use expires with the transfer of ownership of the property, is that right? Or would it stay even if they sell it to someone else?
The special use would continue regardless of a change in ownership. It rides with the title to the property.
Okay, and it rides with the title no matter how the building is modified as well?
That's correct. As long as it complies with what has been approved. So a good point of clarification maybe, the special use is being requested for the primary residence. So the applicant has not asked for any other structures on the property to be used as a short-term rental.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, we're going to move on to item 9.
All right. There we go. Second item this evening is at 5398 Atlanta Highway. This is a rezone request. This is a night for unique items. This one involves a property that is split between Athens-Clarke County and the city of Bogart. I can tell you, I've worked here a little bit. I've never dealt with one of these. We just don't have these happen that often. So the ask is to go from single-family residential, RS8 zoning, and I apologize, I'm not really sure why that's happening, to go to employment office. It's a 4.5 acre portion that's in Athens-Clarke County of a total 18.66 acre parcel. So the vast majority of this is actually within the city of Bogart's municipal boundaries. Wow. The request is motivated by an interest in the owner to have an opportunity to grow a commercial operation on this site. There is a concept plan that shows two options for some office locations. That plan would be non-binding. All right, let's show this very quickly before it disappears. So the heavy dashed line is the jurisdictional boundary, going north and south. To the east of that is the portion in Athens-Clarke County. To the west is in the city of Bogart. This has frontage on Atlanta Highway as you're heading into Bogart. All right, from a future land use standpoint, we have identified this as an employment track for many, many years. This has been designated as employment since the early 2000s, and the zoning of the single-family residential is really kind of an inherited zoning that's been on the property for decades. So the request is consistent with the future land use. Here's the zoning to the left, what it is today, RS8. The ask is to go to employment office. Here's that concept plan, and so you can see along Fowler Mill, you would have two possible office buildings. This is not binding. This is just a concept of what they would like to do. And here's a view of the parcel as it appears today. Planning Commission recommendation, their evaluation was that it's compatible with the comprehensive plan. It does provide an opportunity for some incremental growth of commercial functions near the city of Bogart. Wow. And the rezone to EO is a really solid transition between the single-family character and the industrial character that is anticipated by the future land use map. So the recommendation is for approval without condition. That concludes the staff report.
All right, thanks, Bruce. Is there anyone here to speak to this tonight? Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leela Hardy, and I'm the owner of H3 Development and a realtor with Keller Williams Realty. And I'm representing my clients, Rehab Construction Co. Inc. this evening. And I just wanted to say that on behalf of Rehab Construction Co., they're very excited to move their family-owned and operated business that has been around for 3 generations to the Athens-Clarke County community. And I am also happy to answer any questions that anybody may have And I know we have another meeting coming up, but just wanted to introduce myself and speak on behalf of Rehab Construction Co. and the nature of their business, just so that you guys and the members here of the audience are aware. They provide rehabilitation construction services for water resources for military, city, municipalities, and any other private operated business. They can come in and provide more sustainable water sources for them. And that's the nature of their business and what would be joining this community. So just wanted to let y'all know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hardy. Is there anyone else here to speak to this project? All right, this is in District 6. Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I don't see any issue with this. Discussion seemed brief at the mayor and commission meeting, at the planning commission meeting, and agree with the staff and planning commission recommendation. I did just want to ask, mostly out of curiosity, it's split between here and Bogart. Do they also need to seek any kind of change in Bogart, or is this pretty much something they can do by right there, and it's just that smaller portion of the property that has them going through this process?
So the improvement was entirely in the Athens-Clarke County side of the parcel, as was indicated to us. If there is a process they need to go through with Oconee County and with the city of Bogart officials, they'd work through that independently, but it's not I don't believe there's any zoning change necessary for the development on that side of the line.
Okay, so this project, essentially, if it moves forward from here, this project can move forward without people in the area wondering whether something else has to happen elsewhere.
As far as I know, that's the scope. That may be a good
But
question for the
I
applicant.
guess maybe I'll just invite the applicant to clarify in case she can.
Couldn't hear the second half. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand for the sake of folks who live in the area, if this moves forward from this body, is that it for this to be approved, or do you also need to get some kind of approval from either City of Bogart or Oconee County?
So that's it for the sake of their office, for their staff. They have less than 10 family members that are staff, so they would just build the headquarters on the 4.66 Athens-Clarke County. And then if they decide a future use for the rest of the property, then we would go that route with City of Bogart.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah. All right, my pleasure, thank you.
Any other questions or remarks? All right, we'll go to the third one.
Okay. Third and last zoning item for this evening is 215 Shadybrook Drive. It's a special use permit request. This item came to you before, and the applicant withdrew. Worked with surrounding residents and planning staff to develop a revision that I believe addresses the comments that were received in that first review. And so this is back before you as a new application. The rezone, it's a rezone from RS8 to RS1. There's a non-binding concept plan that was submitted. Although the applicant, again, has offered to bind the plan, and we'll talk about that in a minute in the staff request, the staff review and the Planning Commission recommendation. There's a connection shown through the Willow Mist neighborhood through Seagraves Drive. A good portion of Seagraves Drive is private, but Seagraves Drive is the connection to Lexington Road and would be the primary source of access for this in the early going. There is a proposed future connection, though, that would attach to the Lakewood plan development, and you'll see that in some aerials here in a minute. What's proposed are 60 detached dwellings, as well as a clubhouse, a play area, and an overlook space, and a trail that would offer the opportunity for some potential connection to the Athens-Clarke County Greenway. Here's an aerial view of the property, heavily wooded. I apologize, not really sure. So to the left, just coming off the screen, you see Deacle Lake. And that's the property that has a master plan PD on it that would provide future opportunity for interconnection. Willow Mist is immediately to the east, and Seagraves Drive is the loop through that subdivision. Future land use is traditional neighborhood. That would not need to be changed. The zoning request is to go from RS8 to RM1. The reasoning for the request is in the RM1, there's the ability to achieve density without having to subdivide. And given the topographical issues on the site, there's a lot of up and down, as well as a creek bottom, that allows them to cluster the development. So this is an aerial view coming from the other direction, looking south. Lexington Road in this view is at the bottom of the screen. The lake is to the right. And you can kind of begin to make out kind of the slope that's going on there. The site plan, though, the contour lines that are shown really point out the dramatic fall that you have. I've turned you one more time. So in this image, the top of the screen is really kind of west. To the east is Willow Mist at the bottom of the screen. The interconnection is shown at the bottom of the screen into Seagraves Drive. What's circled is that future interconnection point with the Lakewood planned development. What's in green with that tan line running through the middle is the proposed alignment for a greenway connection. And you see the 60 units distributed throughout. As proposed, these would be detached units. The lighter red line around the outside of those units is showing the area of disturbance, the limits of disturbance, and that is something that we're going to come back to in the recommendation. The applicant has stated their intent to not disturb the site to the extent that they can keep tree canopy and certainly work with the neighbors to the north to maintain a buffer with the existing mature wood, hardwoods. So the Planning Commission recommendation, their analysis, they found that it's largely partially compatible with the comprehensive plan and that it provides infill housing, helps address a housing supply issue in the area. It's compatible with the future land use map, the zoning map, as well as our ordinances. The second point of access was addressed through a variance by the hearings board several months ago. So that issue has been tackled by the applicant and the owner. And there are a series of bindable aspects to this submittal that we think are beneficial and have been worked through in a community discussion. So here we go. Oh, please. The conditions of approval, all right, read as follows. The following aspects of the submitted plan would be binding upon approval. So there's 4 things that we would ask be binding. Limits of clearing shown shall not be exceeded. That there be a maximum of 60 residential units and only the one clubhouse structure. The maximum building height would be 40 feet, and the cottages would have a maximum of 2 stories plus a basement level. That's something that staff can easily administer. An interconnecting roadway alignment to the south, to Lakewood, would be coordinated with the development of 1015 Barnett Shoals at the time that comes forward. That the following aspects of the submitted plan be binding upon approval, and this is out of the applicant's report, those 2 points, A and B. Residential units shall be constructed as noted in the applicant's report using exterior building materials that they said that they would use. And the second point would be that they would agree, the owner and developer would agree to a 30-foot greenway easement to accommodate a 12-foot improvement along a non-roadway, so coming away from the road network, that would ultimately be dedicated to the Athens-Clarke County government for greenway construction at a mutually agreed upon location on the property. Third, any access through a private roadway requires recording of an adequate access easement prior to the site submittal, and that easement shall include the entirety of Seagraves Drive, so that somebody coming out of this development, whether they go left or whether they go right, they would be using an easement that's been properly recorded. And the final condition is that all of the comments in section 4 of the planning staff report would be addressed, and those items are really more related to development conditions, things that we could sort through in the plans review process. And that concludes the staff report.
All right, thank you, Bruce. All right, is anyone here to speak to the Shadybrook Drive development? Evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. My name is Ken Bell, Bell and Company. I reside at 1041 Lake Wellbrook Drive. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I want to also thank you for allowing us a couple of months ago to withdraw this application rather than turn it down. If you had turned it down, we couldn't come back before you for 12 months at least. So again, I want to thank you for letting me withdraw it. And I want to thank Bruce for making it so that I don't have to say very much here, because he's pretty much told you everything about the project that we thought were issues that needed some more attention. So we gave them more attention. The owner set up meetings with the neighborhood, some of the neighborhood members that reside around the project, and also set up meetings with the planning staff and a couple of commissioners from this side of the room to talk about and iron out some of those details. So we think this time it will be much easier for you to make a recommendation. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about this project at this point in time. Thank you very
Mr. Bell.
much.
Appreciate it. Is there anybody else here to speak to this project? All right, seeing none, this is in District 3. Commissioner Taylor is not with us this evening, but I know at least telephonically, Commissioner Myers had a question, and I see Commissioner Fisher. I'll recognize you first.
Yes, just wanted to ask, what's your price point on those houses?
I think Mr. Kittle would be more articulate in answering that question. I think they would begin at about $325,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Myers, you with us?
I think so. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Real loud.
Good, good. You can hear me. I just maybe a question, just a reiteration from Bruce. It looks to me like this new plan addresses all of the comments that Commissioner Taylor and I heard when we all met with the neighbors there. Could you just repeat that? Yes, it does, because I know you were at those things, and it looks like it also does address the questions about potential future connection to the Greenway. So that looks like everything is covered in this. Am I correct in my interpretation here?
You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I feel like this is a pragmatic solution to allowing this really beautiful piece of property to be developed. By allowing this zoning change, it allows them to concentrate the development in a corner of the property and preserve the rest of it. It's a beautiful creek, beautiful hardwoods. I'm really grateful to see an extensive tree management plan. That's good to know. I've walked this property years ago with the former owner. I know there was a great deal of consideration for maintaining the ecology in that area. And I know that some of the nearby neighborhoods were really concerned because they've seen some of this kind of mid-rise student housing going up. I hope this assures them that what you're going to get are fairly modest single-family homes that are geared towards families and regular folks who live and work in Athens. And I think we can get some, much-needed connectivity to some of the future neighborhoods that are going in that area. We have a need for this housing. We have a need for this kind of single-family housing, regardless of the price point. There are plenty of families out there who are definitely looking for homes in the $300,000, $400,000 range.
Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, Bruce, can you just confirm, I'm going back and forth between the conditions of staff and the conditions of the planning commission. They look the same to me.
They are the same.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. Thanks.
A lot of words.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, I was part of the meeting with Taylor and staff, and I would like to thank staff and the applicant for addressing the community concerns, because if people will recall, we did ask this to be withdrawn. Yeah, asked this to be withdrawn to start back over, to allow the community to, the surrounding community to speak with the applicant, and we did have some fruitful meetings, and pretty much, even though this may be non-binding, there's not much you can put on that property anyway. But we did have a discussion about the roofs, like the 30-foot or the 40-foot. And I was looking at some of the pictures of the non-binding home, and just, can you go over that real briefly?
Yeah, so the actual architecture itself is not binding, but one of the conditions that was carried forward was the building materials that were, hey, there we go. Condition number 2A there is a section in the applicant's report, and we wanted to suggest that, and the Planning Commission agreed, that be brought forward as an expectation of what the units would look like. So it does it does draw directly from the applicant's submittal on what those cottages would look like.
So in an RM1, I thought there had to be a height limit of 40 feet.
So code currently allows for 40 feet. And so what they are asking in that clarification in the condition is that they have that same maximum building height of 40 feet, but they also would get to have 2 stories in a basement. And because there is the fall on the site, if they run up against the 40-foot calculation, they at a minimum would get to have 2 stories and a basement level. It gives us 2 metrics to use for calculating building height. That's right,
thank
because the
you.
land slopes.
Any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Thornton.
I'm glad to see this project come back before us also. I think it's really important to have residents' input. But I guess my question is, and I'm good with it. I totally support this because of the collaborative effort. But was inclusionary zoning ever a conversation in this development at all?
There was a conversation about the mechanics of the inclusionary zoning ordinance, and the applicant didn't opt to use that.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I just want to thank colleagues for allowing the withdrawal of this. I know it was a pretty fraught conversation we had in September, but now we get to see something move forward in 3 months instead of more than a year. So just want to thank colleagues for coming around on that.
All right, Bruce, thank you very much. We hope you have a great evening, and I'm going to shift back to the dais, and we're going to carry on with old and new business. All right, Commissioner Link asked that number 2 be removed for discussion. So we are now going to receive public input on number 2, if there is any further public input on 2, and 11 through 22. So number 2 and 11 through 22. And you can line up at the podium. There may be several folks interested in providing public input. And you remember the terms of public input are as described earlier. So just let us know your name, place of residence, and then you have the 3-minute opportunity that will be indicated by the clock in front of the clerk. So, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Danielle Bonanno. I am the founder and executive director of Inclusive Recovery Athens, whose mission is to create inclusive recovery spaces for LGBTQ and other marginalized communities. Some of you might know me as the previous president of Athens Pride and Queer Collective. I am here tonight, however, as a neighbor, a trans member of our community. I want to begin by thanking each of you for your past and continued support of our local LGBTQ communities. Each of you, in your own way, has always exhibited the utmost care and compassion for us, such a small segment of the population who is somehow often the focal point of political attacks and rhetoric. I'm here tonight to ask you to reaffirm your past support. Through policies like the non-discrimination ordinance and the flying of the pride flag, you have displayed a commitment to equality and equity. And tonight, through a meaningful resolution, you will show you are willing to stand with us in solidarity when we need it most. The reality is that today, your public support is needed now more than ever. Just this year in Georgia, there were over 23 anti-LGBTQ+ pieces of legislation that were introduced at the state level, ranging from Don't Say Gay bills to bans against my right and the rights of my trans siblings to seek life-saving health care. I'm sure many of you were exposed to the incessant anti-LGBTQ+ television ads that filled all of our television screens over the last few months. We are scared. We are preparing for the worst. But tonight you get to do what you've always done when the moment has demanded it, to remind us that here in Athens-Clarke County we are seen, loved, protected, valued, and perhaps most importantly, safe. There will be some who say, send this to committee to review. What I say to that is, what is there to review or debate about a fellow neighbor's existence? Others might be wary of continued resolutions. I remind those who are wary to spend just one day in our shoes. We too are wary, but this moment demands action. And as my best friend and a friend to many of you, Cameron J., always reminds us, let us not grow weary in doing the most good. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Danielle. Good evening.
Hello, I'm not sure I'm saying this in the right order, but I'm Andrea Swigert. I am at 583 Satula Avenue. Mr. Fisher is my representative. And I am wanting to speak on number 13. Do I need to write out or say that entire thing?
No, you're
The
doing good.
TSPLOST 18, the Prince Avenue corridor, et cetera. I am a daily commuter from my home in Buena Vista neighborhood to UGA. So I use that corridor every single day. I really appreciate those improvements. So I commute along Boulevard. I used to then take Barber Avenue to get to where I need to go. That street is quite dangerous for biking. I'm now able to kind of cut over on a less busy street and take the bike lane. So besides the fact that for me personally, it's really important to be able to commute using those really safe bike lanes, I've seen data on the safety of that corridor once those improvements have been made, and I know that the crashes have decreased by more than a third. The data are really compelling. And so I just don't quite understand why we would go back and take time and effort and probably money to increase crashes along that corridor. Last thing, I also commute quite regularly through that area with my daughter, so that protected barrier between traffic and those bike lanes has been really key for us to be able to transport my young daughter safely on that route. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Swagger. Good evening.
Joan Roden. Tonight I want to speak to the good people of Clarke County who are at home taking care of their children, doing dishes, paying bills, calling aging parents, or helping a struggling teen with homework, or chatting about a rough day at school or the office. I'm speaking to the forgotten people whose lives become upended by the decisions made by this elected body. They are too busy picking up the pieces of their lives to come and say what I'm going to say to you tonight. I come tonight to support an agenda item. It is a resolution for unity. I came to support a resolution that talks about the thousands of good people all across this county who are kind to their neighbors, who don't interfere in other people's lives, even those who are taking a different path than their own. But on the highway called life, we are compelled to stay in our lane. We take tests to learn how to stay in our lane when we drive, and we are given a license to travel the highways with thousands of other travelers, and we do so with remarkable continuity, civility, and adeptness. What you are doing with your resolutions and plans is creating hazardous road conditions that the most able driver will find challenging. What this body is allowing is a perpetual war class. You're constantly moving the stop signs and putting up dead ends. You replace proverbial four-way stops with unsustainable yield signs in every direction that creates a let's see who can get there fastest competition. You're creating a turf war that cannot ever end well. You are not acting as waymakers, you're acting as warmongers. When the ACC coordinated refuge plan adoption, you are using language to manipulate the people by creating a narrative of protection from harm when you know exactly what is coming down the road at a breakneck speed. It's a tsunami. It's a hazard this refuge plan is creating, and the people at home are clueless. Take a look at the tent encampment debacle and ponder on the many people who were terribly betrayed by this ruling body. It was a war of attrition. With the resolution for LGBTQIA plus community, the body is asking for the people of Athens to pretend there is a war. You're asking us to see something that isn't there. But if you suggest that there is a war and you tell the people that you, this body, are protecting them from enemies that do not exist, then you are creating a climate for not only road rage, but a chaotic emotional traffic jam that makes Atlanta look tame. Your fear-mongering and creating division by the very nature of this resolution you call a Hallmark card, but it is nothing more than a Judas kiss. You're creating a war of betrayal. With this resolution to implement ranked choice voting, you're inserting a level of chaos that, like that of California. We're still waiting for election results from that state. Ranked choice voting is another name for mob rule
Thank you,
at
Ms.
the ballot
Roden.
box.
I appreciate you coming down tonight.
And another way to create chaos for voters already challenged with every changing rule. Mayor and commission, please stay in your lane. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hey, Tony Eubanks, 785 North Hope Street, here to address the Prince Avenue. We've been living with the new lane configuration on Prince Avenue for 2 years, and it's done an amazing thing. It is. I was trying to think of the word to describe what crossing Prince Avenue was like before we implemented this project, and I was kind of thinking angry. It was an angry street, but actually what it was hostile. It was hostile to pedestrians. I crossed Prince Avenue right there by the old Daily location, now the Birdie's location, several times a week, 5-6 times a week. And when it was 2 lanes going in each direction, when you push the button, it was 50-50 whether a car would stop, at best. And that's an average. The lane closest would usually stop. The lane furthest away would usually not. So when I say 50-50, it's likely that the travel lane furthest from you coming either side was not going to stop. Now, and I wait until there's a gap coming at least one way before I push the button. And now, when I'm standing there just waiting for the gap, cars stop automatically without pushing the button. The other thing that I notice is when I drive, and I drive, like I said in my letter to you, 75% of the time, when I go west, it's very rare that the crosswalk signal at the now Clarke County School District building, it's very rare when that is not being activated. So what it's telling me is that people are comfortable, and therefore they are using the streets as pedestrians. And that's an amazing thing. It's night and day. From angry or hostile to friendly. Now, does it take longer to get out of my street? Absolutely. Does it take longer to get out of Child's Street? Absolutely. But this also brings up another aspect of it. People stop and let you out. It's kind of amazing. So not only has this street made for less crashes, more safety, it's actually making us a little bit more friendly. And that's kind of amazing. And so I hope that when we repave this street, we'll keep it the way it is now. And make it prettier. Yeah, we didn't make it pretty. We tried to do it as inexpensively as possible to see if it worked. And it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eubanks. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Peter Norris. I reside at 460 Sunset Avenue. I rise in support of the Prince Avenue corridor improvements. We seek your approval for the design to replace the temporary rubber blocks with precast concrete curbs, to improve the Prince Doherty-Pulaski intersection, make it safe for pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles, and to replace the impervious asphalt at Prince and Cobb with a rain garden. The user group originally recommended the reusable rubber Zikla zippers, now delineating the roadway, so that Safe Streets prototypes could be tested on other roadways at the conclusion of the Prince Avenue test. The recommended replacement is precast concrete curbs manufactured in Georgia. Using precast instead of poured concrete minimizes disruption to traffic during the replacement process and allows the roadway to fulfill its maximum life while simplifying future repaving. The sides of the concrete buffers have gentle slopes which will not damage vehicles. Moving on to the Prince and Pulaski, the user group has spent many hours considering the possible solutions to this complex intersection and settled upon one that improves safety, for all users without restricting traffic. It naturally separates people from cars at the critical apex in the intersection. Finally, on the rain garden, you're undoubtedly aware that non-point sources, such as roads and parking lots, are the primary cause of pollution in the North Oconee, a source of drinking water. With the reconfiguration, sections of the roadway became unused. I saw an opportunity to provide an extra benefit to our town and recruited graduate students in environmental design, they still work for pizza, to help visualize a rain garden to capture stormwater runoff. Their illustrations helped persuade the user group that we could accomplish multiple goals with a single structure if we just try a little harder. The proposed rain garden at Cobb and Prince, the first on city right-of-way, will transform an environmental negative into a facility for capturing and filtering runoff while enhancing the streetscape. I hope this sub-project will be emulated throughout the city. I hope you will consider these and other aspects that as I wrote to you when you approve this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Good evening.
I'm Sarah Rupersberg, 170 Virginia Avenue, speaking on agenda item 13. I'd like to take this opportunity to express my full support to the Mayor and Commission to approve option 1 as recommended by the Planning Department to make the Prince Avenue Corridor Improvement Project permanent. As a resident of the Boulevard neighborhood, I utilize Prince Avenue on a daily basis as a driver, a pedestrian, or a cyclist, and I've greatly benefited from the improvements on the street. A great example of this just happened on Saturday night. My neighbor and I decided we wanted to take our children, who are between the ages of 5 and 7, to Ted's Most Best for dinner. We were worried about parking downtown due to the football game, so we decided to walk and let our kids ride on their scooters. We made it in great time, and we felt comfortable returning home, even though it was dark by that time, because the traffic improvements have made it so much safer and easier to use Prince Avenue. I can tell you unequivocally, we would not have made that decision before these changes had been there. Without the bike lanes and the crosswalks and the improvements that we have now. I love that we were able to get some exercise in, to build our kids' skills and familiarity with getting around our town. And improvements like this are what makes Athens so special. They are central to building more equitable and accessible community. Please vote for option 1 and continue to build on the success and the safety that you've already established. And I support the LGBTQIA resolution too.
Thank you, Ms. Rupersberg. Good evening.
Hi there. I'm Christian Turner. I live at 297 Lyndon Avenue, and here to talk about the Prince Avenue project. And so many of the decisions that you all make involve some complicated trade-offs, like a little more noise here, a little more economic development there. This user group unhappy, this user group happy. I think it's worth celebrating when you've done something which has basically improved an area in every way. I drive, I bike, I walk in that area. The driving on that stretch is now both safer and more pleasant. The walking is safer and more pleasant. The biking is a hell of a lot safer and a lot more pleasant. And it's possible now to sit outside at one of these restaurants along that strip and not worry that someone passing on the right at 50 miles per hour is going to take out a whole stream of people trying to dine. So I think it's worth investing more in that area, making it a little bit nicer yet. But going back involves, well, a lot of danger. And there's a record. We know it's safer. We know what will happen if we go back to the somewhat deadly and dangerous times on that strip of road that we had for 2 decades. So urge you to do the right thing, make it, continue to make this permanent, continue to lean into the advantages that you have conferred on the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Good evening.
Hey, Lisa Milet, 237 Hiawassee Avenue, and I'm here primarily about the Prince Avenue corridor improvements as well, and to speak in favor of that, but learning that ranked choice voting and a resolution to support our LGBTQIA neighbors is on the agenda. I strongly support those as well. But with respect to the Prince Avenue corridor, I think those of us who live closest to it interact with Prince Avenue, the particular part that's been affected with the improvements multiple times a day. We're not commuters who might see it twice a day during the week, or game day folks who come into town 6 days a year. We're folks who are interacting with it. For me, it's 2 to 6 times every day, 7 days a week. At this point, with the improvements, I now ride my bike to commute to campus. I used to drive by myself in a car. I was one of the people taking up that space, but now I feel safe enough that I've driven to campus exactly 3 times this semester, all when the weather's been bad. I drive that way, and I no longer have to worry about cars swerving in and out at 50 miles an hour, which was never safe there to begin with, given that there's no shoulder and there are restaurant tables right on the curb. And now they're driving the speed limit because there's nowhere to pass, so they don't have to worry about getting in front of one more car. And I walk my dogs that way, and I cross Prince Avenue, and it no longer feels like I'm playing Frogger. So all around, I think it's a great improvement, and those of us who are there every day interacting with it, I haven't heard anyone in that category complaining about it. So I hope that you'll make those improvements permanent. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Milet. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Julian French. I live at 255 Sherwood Drive, and I am speaking on Resolution 22 as a transgender youth living in Athens. When I was 12 at the beginning of the school year, my father took the liberty of outing me to all my teachers. For the most part, school staff was supportive themselves. My peers, however, were decidedly not. I witnessed several queer students, including myself, be called homophobic slurs, dead-named, and generally harassed on a constant basis for the crime of existing. My teachers, who were themselves nominally accepting, did nothing to stop this or intervene. I remember once the person sitting behind me yelling my dead name into my ear repeatedly to get a rise out of me, and that the teacher did not acknowledge it in any way. Said teacher had a rainbow sign reading, "You are safe here," on their door. It's a common trap people fall into, assuming that acknowledging that oppression is wrong is the same as working to dismantle it. And while their hearts are in the right place, a sign on the door is toothless without someone behind it who is willing to actively protect queer people. I am here in support of this resolution, but I am also here to urge, do not let this just be a resolution. Act on it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Julian. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joey Kellner. I live at 575 Talmadge Drive. And I'm here to speak in support of the Prince Avenue corridor, making it permanent and improving it. A few statistics from the Insurance Institute for highway safety, all pointing in the same direction. Recent years have seen a massive increase in pedestrian fatalities, cyclist fatalities, and serious injuries in collisions with cars. We have the highest level of pedestrian and cyclist deaths in more than 40 years in the United States right now. Vehicles with higher front ends and blunt profiles are 45% more likely to cause a fatality in an accident, and these are the vehicles that are being sold more and more, with no effort from the government and either party really to regulate these things. Pedestrian deaths in car crashes have jumped 40% since 2009. And so we talk about the danger of Prince Avenue 20 years ago, or over the last 20 years. It's getting even worse, and the only solution is physical barriers between cyclists, pedestrians, and vehicles. And so Prince Corridor should be a model for the town. It's a great piece of infrastructure. It makes the whole area accessible for me, for my toddler. It makes the town walkable. It makes the businesses in that area accessible and safe. And so, and as a person who drives on Prince Avenue, I've noticed virtually no slowing, even in peak hours of traffic. And so I see, like everyone else here, all kinds of reasons to support making it permanent, all the improvements, improving the intersections, all that we should absolutely do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kilner.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Kevin Bond, 140 Park Avenue. I am here to support item 13, Prince Avenue. Like many others who have spoken tonight, I am a university employee who has now been able to ride my bike instead of drive to work, and it has been incredible to not fear my life on that road. And the protected bike lane is the only way forward, and the idea to go backwards, it makes no sense to me. So I urge the committee to please support this, and I'd also like to voice my support and love for the LGBTQ community.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jim Berry. I live at 550 Holman Avenue, and I'm here to ask you to continue to support the Prince Avenue bike lane infrastructure improvements. I used that area of Prince Avenue several times a day, probably mostly for driving and walking or running, and basically any mode of transportation for me, it's become better as a result of the improvements. And I think these kinds of infrastructure improvements, it's useful to encourage cycling, and the more they are, the more cycling there is. And there's research that says that the more cycling a city has, actually, the more infrastructure a city has can improve the amount of cycling, but it also decreases the total number of accidents with cyclists. So I think these kinds of improvements are a win-win. But I would also kind of think about some of the folks around who, unlike me, don't have access to cars, either because they don't have a car, they don't have a license, and they might only have a bicycle to get around. And so having safety improvements for them, I think is really important, and they might not have as much of a voice in these kinds of forums. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Nina Santis, and I live at 141 Kendine Street and use the Prince Avenue bike lanes. Also, being here tonight, hearing number 22 for the LGBTQIA plus community, just in support of them as a marginalized population, and an attack on one of them should be viewed as attack on all of us. I'm here to voice my support for making the Prince Avenue bike lanes and safety improvements permanent. This bike lane provided a dedicated space for cyclists to ride separate from automobiles, which reduces the risk of collision and injuries. Protected bike lanes can reduce collisions and injuries 30 to 50%. Research studies have shown that motorists view cyclists as less than human due to the protective gear we wear that covers our hair, eyes, and other features. This dehumanization has been found to be predictive of hostile and aggressive behavior. In areas without bike lanes, I have personally experienced the aggression in Athens of motorists who have nearly clipped my body and my bike on Prince Avenue. Drivers have regularly yelled at me on Prince Avenue to get off of the roads, have failed to go 3 feet around me, and have tried to pass me as I ride through an intersection. Most cyclists I know will only ride in a group on the roads and in and around Athens because of motorists' aggressive behaviors, and noncompliance with rules of the road. The bike lanes on Prince Avenue are an important step in the right direction for Athens. It has been demonstrated that reducing the width of the road signals motorists to reduce speed, drive more carefully, and pay more attention, leading to safer overall environment for all travelers on the corridor. Other amazing things happen too when cities create bike lanes. People are encouraged to cycle instead of driving, reducing road traffic, which reduces carbon emissions and improves air quality. I've personally used them for leisure and for work and to go to shops. Cycling is an activity that is known to increase fitness, and this can contribute to decreased healthcare costs for those who participate. The question should not be if we have a bike lane. The question for any city as great as Athens, Georgia, should be how many bike lanes can we build and how fast can it be done? U.S. cities such as Nashville, Boulder, Austin, Boston, Portland, and many others have constructed hundreds of miles of bike lanes. Athens-Clarke County is far behind the curve in this important upgrade of transportation safety infrastructure. I urge you to vote in favor of this, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Santis. Good evening.
Doing. Hello, I'm Randy Halstead. I reside at 320 Cherokee Road in Winterville. I believe I'm the only person so far that has spoken that lives outside of Athens. But I do so in that I'm here to support the Prince Avenue improvements. I do ride my bicycle in from Winterville, and the safest spots I have comfort in are the Firefly Trail coming down Hancock and Prince Avenue. Everywhere else, I'm on constant alert as to trying to not be run over. So I think ultimately what we're talking about here is safety. If we give people safe avenues to take transportation other than driving a car, they will use it. If you were out during Porch Fest recently, for all intent and purposes, traffic essentially shuts down, and the town is open to people on bikes and e-scooters and walking. They were everywhere. At one particular show I was at, I counted 23 bicycles laid up and people attending. So if we do build these and keep these safe avenues, people will use them. I'm not going to go on too much more. I think all the previous people have covered quite a bit. But with each person that is using an e-scooter and using a bicycle, it is one less vehicle on the road. And unfortunately, I've spent a lot of time driving over to Piedmont Hospital, it seems like, over the last few years. And certainly haven't seen any issues driving Prince Avenue. In fact, I do that from Winterville rather than take the loop. It's safer. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Halstead. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Dan Lawrence. I live at 157 Grady Avenue here in Athens, just a block off of Prince Avenue. Here to support the Prince Avenue sub-project and sub-projects. My wife and I have lived near Prince Avenue since we moved here in 2008. And almost every day, I cross Prince Avenue on foot heading downtown or to restaurants or shops along the avenue. My wife walks to work at UGA and crosses Prince at least twice a day. We also drive on Prince almost every day. We don't really bike on it much, but before the new lane configurations and other improvements, Prince did feel intimidating and dangerous, I think, and hostile, as Mr. Eubanks said, to cross. And we both experienced close calls with speeding, oblivious car traffic on Prince Avenue. The changes you all have voted for and implemented on Prince Avenue have made our daily lives feel so much safer, both on foot and behind the wheel. I think the information ACC staff has provided you guys confirms that Prince Avenue has gotten a lot safer over the years. And just a couple other points. My wife and I have a number of friends who live in the neighborhood who, since these traffic calming measures have been put in place, are now commuting to and from work on bikes. And that itself is a strong sign that people feel that the road is safer. Also, Prince Avenue just seems livelier and more enjoyable place to be. That's got to be good for business, and it's certainly good for us neighbors. I just want to thank you all for the work you've done to improve Prince Avenue over the years, and hope you keep moving forward on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lorenz. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Whitney Robinson, and I reside on 285 Old Will Hunter Road. And I just wanted to vocalize my support for the LGBTQIA measure. I wanted to start by saying that I'm a transplant from South Georgia, and my hometown is unfortunately very homophobic. A few years ago, some bigoted people burned and defaced a pride flag from a gay couple's house in my hometown, and it was a stark reminder of how dangerous it can be for us queer folks in Georgia. For starters, Athens has been my home for nearly 11 years. It's where I actually discovered my queerness. It's where I've learned to lean into my softness and embrace my authentic self. It's where I've found a loving, warm, vibrant community of queer folks and allies who do so much to make this town a welcoming space for marginalized identities. Seeing Georgia fall further into fascism has made me realize just how important towns like Athens are in states like mine. It's been alarming to seeing my fellow LGBTQ+ community face threats to their safety in Athens. On October the 19th of this year, a 48-year-old black trans woman died under suspicious circumstances in Athens, Georgia. Their name was San Coleman. Where is the public outrage for her death? Georgia politicians moved heaven and earth to avenge Laken Riley's horrific murder. Their silence regarding San's death is a stark reminder of the dangers that our trans community members must live with. Athens is not perfect, but queer folks and allies are doing our best to make this town a bright, rainbow-colored beacon symbolizing safety and belonging in this state. While the Rainbow Crosswalk is a lovely addition to downtown, it doesn't mean anything without action. Thus, I urge the City of Athens to move forward with designating Athens as a safe haven for the LGBTQ+ community. Thank you.
Thank you, Whitney. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you. My name is Charlotte Hovland. I live at 183 Beulah Avenue. And as you can probably tell from my horrible pants, I am a biker. I bike commute every day from my home in Boulevard to the UGA campus, where I'm a graduate student. I do not have a car, on a graduate student stipend, I frankly could not afford a car, and I don't like to think what my life would be if there were no bike lanes on Prince Avenue. When I go home from this meeting, I'll take the Prince Avenue bike lane. And that really has given me freedom of movement, enabled me to live here and take part in this community, and I'm so grateful. While I'm up here, I also just wanted to share my support for resolutions 21 and 22. Ranked choice voting is a way to allow people to have democracy that reflects their preferences. And that's, I think, what democracy should be. And as a member of the LGBTQIA community, if you'll have me, I would be really heartened to see that resolution pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Michael Goltzer. I live at 120 Valleywood Drive in Athens. And I'd like to express my support for option 1 on agenda item 13 regarding Prince Avenue, as recommended by staff. I'm a longtime commuter on Prince Avenue. I've ridden on Prince Avenue for decades, and I can tell you that recently I breathe a sigh of relief when I get to Millage Avenue and I can scoot into that protected lane. What a relief it is. But that's more than, I want you to consider more than just my subjective feelings and look at the data. And also, I think that Athens-Clarke County should pat itself on the back because this reduction in injuries means that some people have not been injured during the time that this has been up. You've prevented those people from being hurt. So I'd like you to try to consider that this is a way to make our streets safer for all kinds of transportation, not just cyclists, not just athletic people in spandex, but commuters, kids riding their bikes, old people like me who just want to get out and get some fitness. And please support alternatives to driving a car. Wrap up, I'd also like to say I would appreciate your support for agenda items 21, ranked choice voting, and also for agenda item 22. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Culture. Good evening.
Hey, my name is Colby Canizero. I live at 220 William Street here in Athens. So I'm the president of a brand new student organization at UGA called Bike UGA. But more importantly, I'm just a student who bikes literally everywhere I can in Athens. So if it's like probably less than an hour bike ride, I'll probably be biking there instead of driving my car. And something we talk about in my new student organization is like, what's preventing people from biking more? And we've never talked about, no one's ever said, I think people aren't biking because there's no bike lane on Prince Avenue. But I think if we don't make this this bike lane on Prince Avenue a permanent addition, I think that's definitely an issue that we're going to have to start talking about. Because on Prince Avenue is Bike Athens, and that's where almost all my colleagues go to get their bikes repaired. And a lot of my colleagues wouldn't feel safe biking on Prince Avenue without a bike lane. So I feel like if the bike lane on Prince Avenue wasn't a permanent addition, there will be rippling effects just throughout campus, not even just Athens. I mean, in UGA, I feel like just a lot less people would be riding their bikes and a lot more people would be driving. And I just think it would be terrible for the state of biking at UGA. Thanks.
Thank you, Colby. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Chase Lessing. I live at 130 Hickory Street, and I'm the current vice president of Bike UGA, the student organization he just discussed. And I'm here to support the improvements to Prince Ave bike lane. Speaking from personal experience, I do have a car. However, I actively choose not to use it and bike to all my classes purely because it's more efficient in many ways. And secondly, because before I go to all my classes and I am biking, let's say on a sunny day, I feel my mood and concentration actively improve. And I can't speak for anyone else, but I think I've heard a lot of support for biking in a similar way. I have also spoken to other students discussing how they face their traveling around Athens. And a lot of people say they would bike if it felt more safe and supported. So I'm not going to hold you here all day. I know many people have discussed this before, but I actively support these improvements, and I believe it should be used as a model for the rest of Athens.
Thank you, Chase. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Samir Honda. I live at 85 North Avenue. Before I go into the biking thing, I want to express my support for resolutions 21 and 22, supporting ranked choice voting in local elections, as well as supporting the LGBTQIA+ community. So, as I said before, I'm here to voice my support for making the Prince Avenue bike lanes and safety improvements permanent. These changes have proven their worth through reduced crash rates since their installation, and this infrastructure isn't just about cycling. It's about creating safer streets for everyone in our community. I personally use the Prince Avenue bike lanes at least 3 times a week for leisure and exercise. As others have said, many use these lanes for shopping, relaxation, and to commute to work. Supporting bike lanes means supporting sustainable infrastructure and supporting the initiatives that bring people to the area. It's abundantly evident to anybody who's been in Athens for the past few years the enormous community benefit of closing off the Broad Street/College Avenue stretch. The same goes for Prince Avenue, which has witnessed a greater pedestrian population and a more lively atmosphere as people now feel comfortable biking with their families and for work. Moreover, as a student of the University of Georgia who bikes on campus in unprotected bike lanes, I know firsthand the degree of unsafety that I feel that at any moment cars can and have swerved into the bike lanes, either by accident, to stop, or to promote hostile anti-bike behavior. As a resident of North Avenue, I also know firsthand the degree of unsafety that I feel as a biker with no bike lanes, who has to decide between endangering myself by biking on the road or endangering pedestrians by biking on the sidewalk, since there are virtually no bike lanes anywhere from North Avenue to the center of downtown. I urge you to vote in favor of making these improvements permanent. Support the initiatives that protect the health, safety, and enjoyment of the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Samir. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Jane Eggers, and I live in the Myers Dormitory at 1055 South Lumpkin Street. I'm here to voice my support for making the Prince Avenue bike lanes and safety improvements permanent. I am a student, and I am my own mode of transportation. I walk, I run, I bike to orchestra, to classes, to the grocery store, and I have had several instances in Athens where distracted drivers have veered into the bike lane and nearly hit me and run me off the road. The expansion and continued improvement of bike lanes is vital. These changes that have been implemented have proven their worth through reduced crash rates since their installation. This infrastructure is critical in protecting people. You have the opportunity to create safer streets for everyone in our community. I urge you to vote in favor of making these improvements permanent. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Eggers. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Darden, and my husband and I live at 585 Prince Avenue. And I have to back my car up only, to get out. And so I like the Prince Avenue safety as it is, because if there was 2 lanes there, I would not be able, somebody could swing over from another lane and I wouldn't see them. It would be more dangerous. And I like the bike lane too. So I like all the safety features because I'm backing up. I'm not going forward and I have to wait for the traffic.
Thank you, Ms. Darden. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Meredith Welch Devine. I live at 148 Virginia Avenue. So I live in a neighborhood that is directly adjacent to the Prince Corridor. I'm also a very heavy user of this corridor. I work on the UGA campus, and so I walk back and forth once or twice a day, and I use my car on this stretch of road multiple times per week. And I am just imploring you to make these changes permanent. The bike lanes and safety improvements have made me as a pedestrian and as a motorist feel much, much safer. And you've seen the data that is indeed the fact, that this corridor is safer. So thank you for the work that you've done thus far, and please do make these changes permanent. And also, while I'm here, I would like to also just voice my support for agenda items 21 and 22 as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Good evening.
Hey folks, I'm John Devine, also at 148 Virginia Avenue. And I would like to speak a little bit on behalf of my 14-year-old. I'm a proud CCHS dad, and she walks to school every day with her friends and crosses and walks along Prince Avenue. I'm not sure that would be really feasible without the improvements that have already been made to the street that are in place now. And so what I'm asking, and I think should be clear to anyone who's read the agenda report or been out on Prince Avenue, what I'm asking is to keep these changes. to allow them to stay in place, not to make Prince Avenue safer than it is now, but to keep it as safe as it is now by making permanent the reconfiguration. I'm also asking you, if you're considering voting no against Prince Avenue and the reconfiguration, please let me know. I would be happy to take the time to walk, bike, take the bus down the corridor, drive down the corridor with you, and just talk about your opposition to it. So thank you so much for your consideration. Very much appreciate your public service. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Devine. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is David Bykoff. I live at 533 Nantahala Avenue. I'm here tonight to voice my support for maintaining the Prince Avenue corridor, safety and traffic calming measures, including the 3-lane configuration and bike lanes that are currently in place. That's item number 13. I live in Boulevard. I almost daily commute on Prince Avenue in the corridor, either by car, by bike, or on foot as a pedestrian. I own a small business downtown. When I bike to work, I use the separated bike lanes on Prince that then connect to the bike lanes downtown. I wouldn't feel safe riding a bike to work if the bike lanes weren't there. Walking along Prince, I think now is also is safer. There aren't 4 lanes of cars speeding by at 40 to 50 miles an hour, inches from the sidewalk. Crossing the street in the flashing beacon crosswalks is safer than before, so there are fewer lanes to cross, and the speeds are generally slower. Driving along Prince now is safer. There aren't cars changing lanes suddenly. I haven't noticed any significant increased delay of traffic during my time commuting by car since the changes were implemented. The existing 3-lane configuration also encourages me and my family to patronize all the small businesses along the corridor. My child goes to Emmanuel Episcopal Day School. He rides on my bike with me on his seat on the back of my bike. He rides in the car with me, and we sometimes walk. And he loves traveling down Prince on a bike, by foot, and on car. I think all the businesses and churches and nonprofits located on Prince are now more accessible because of the safety measures you all implemented 2 years ago. Please vote to keep Prince Avenue safe, maintain the 3-lane configuration, keep the bike lanes, and other safety measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bakoff. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Mick McClelland. I live at 140 Saxon Woods here in Athens, and I wanted to voice my support for both Resolutions 21 and 22, and speaking on the proposal for creating a sanctuary city and some actionable causes to create a safer place for LGBTQ people here. The statistics say that statewide, there's probably about 5,800 people residing here in Athens who are of the queer community, and I would argue that given the nature of Athens and a larger context of Georgia, that we probably host an even higher amount of that population, though I wouldn't be able to say just how much. At the end of the day, that's about 3 to 4% of the population here in Athens, and I think absolutely reflects a strong motion in order to protect the people here that are part of that community. I think that it's very clear that we're going to have to decide who we are as a city and as a people, and this is one way in which we can do that. It should hopefully be a pretty simple and easy way that we can make that decision. And when the foundational question of whether or not LGBTQ people deserve rights inevitably re-arrives here in our home state, which I imagine it might, we will have to come with an answer, I think as a community at large and hopefully as a governing city council here too. And the most critical part of hearing out this resolution is having a governing body that reflects a solid and actionable stance rather than one that is maybe a lot more verbally driven. It doesn't really do much for the community when we don't have real safeguards and real advances that show that people are safe here. And like what was mentioned earlier, we've recently lost someone very viciously in our community. And there's not really been any outcry or outrage about that death of Sam Coleman, but that does not delegitimize the weight of their death. And I think about the people that will continue to be lost and have been lost. And in reality, Georgia currently has the 4th highest death rate for trans people of violent crime. And that is not a number that was born out of the imagination. So I encourage us to make decisions that are focused on the reality of the rhetoric that we are faced with. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Christina Garcia. I live at 187 Flint Street. And I wanted to speak in support of the Resolution 22 for LGBTQIA+. I think it's really great that we're discussing cultivating an inclusive, equitable, and supportive community. But I think it's even more imperative that we also take action to make this actually happen. I've lived here in Athens for 10 years and have been a part of the queer community. This is where I embrace my queerness, and I hope to continue to be a part of this community. And I think that passing this resolution would be the first step towards allowing all of us to continue to live openly and be our authentic selves.
Thank you, Christina. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Stimson. I live on Appleby Drive, Athens, Georgia, 30605. I'm here to support the resolution to protect and support LGBTQ rights in Athens, Georgia. I have been here since 2010, so about 14 years now, first as a student and now as someone who works and lives in the community. And I know that myself and a lot of others in the community are just very scared about what's going on nationwide and in our state, and it would be such a relief and helpful to have a resolution like this passed, as well as taking further steps to protect the community whenever possible, if there's more things that we can do to kind of reinforce that. I know that there is a lot of other people that I reached out to tonight about this that were just hearing about it for today and weren't able to make it tonight. And so I just want y'all to know that for people that are coming up and speaking, there was many, many more people that also support this, and we just weren't able to make it tonight. So thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Good evening.
Hi. I'm Abby Bennett. I live at 150 Landor Drive. I was not planning on speaking tonight, but I was here to support Vanessa. But after listening to people speak about both the resolution for keeping the bike lane improvements and the resolution to support LGBTQIA rights, I think both of them really just speak to the kind of city that we want to be in Athens, which is a city of safety where people feel welcome and that they can be a part of the community, whether they're biking somewhere, whether they can just be present. And this happened on Saturday. We were in line and talking about this. My cousins came in from Conyers and they said, "Do you think you could just come down to the football game? We'll be at the Classic Center. Just come on." And as a lot of other townies are like, "I'd rather stab my eyes than get in a car and go anywhere near downtown on a game day." And I was like, I lived in Raleigh for 15 years. In Raleigh, I was a cyclist. And in Athens, I'm less of a cyclist because it is a game of where can I be and where can I be safe, right? And I thought, I can do this. It's 3 miles, I'll go. And I biked to the game and I biked back and I biked back safely. And I think keeping these improvements and making sure that we continue to make these improvements can help people like me that are still a little nervous to be a cyclist from a big city where there's a lot more protections, to continue to make sure that I can spend time with my cousins who, when I showed up, my cousin had a pride flag and said, "In Conyers, I can't do this. In Conyers, I can't be visible, but I can come here and I can be visible and I can enjoy my time with my partner, and then I have to go home." And so I think it seems silly, but these two things are really thinking about where we want our city to be and what kind of people we want to show to the rest of the state of Georgia, where people can go out and say, "Yeah, let me grab my bike. Let me fly my flag. Let me support our community." So I appreciate these things coming up. I think it's important that we talk about them, and I appreciate you letting me speak on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Good evening.
Good evening, Hamlin Jackson. I live at 690 Nantahala Avenue. So I come before you tonight to support the Prince Avenue, maintaining the Prince Avenue improvements. First of all, like many of people who have spoken tonight, I use these bike lanes probably between 5 and 10 times a week. So I'm a regular user of them, both commuting and getting out recreationally. And I am encouraged by how many people I hear who live in those neighborhoods and use them, but I also speak to a lot of other people who still don't feel comfortable using them, because these improvements are one piece, but until they're connected beyond just those neighborhoods, the many, many other people who I believe would use them still don't, just like the last person who spoke. You take the risk factor into account when you leave your house. I grew up in Athens and I grew up riding bikes, so I feel very comfortable on a bike, but I have an aunt who lives in Normaltown, doesn't feel comfortable still, you know, so we need more. We need to keep these, but we need to keep going. I also, I grew up here, but I also had 5 years where I lived somewhere with good, comprehensive bike infrastructure, and I didn't have a car for those 5 years, and it was a liberating feeling to know that I didn't need it, and to be able to get around anywhere I needed to safely with either public transport or, in my case, almost always on a bike. The reality is cars are getting bigger and cars are getting more dangerous and people are more distracted than ever. Cars have their place, but in an urban environment that's densifying like downtown with so many more apartments, so many more inhabitants, the reality is if everybody's driving around in a car, it's going to be a nightmare. I would lastly just urge you to think about how you feel the next time you're sitting in traffic, and look at the next person you see ride by on a bike, and see how you think they're feeling, because I want to spread that. And every person that's on a bike is getting out of the way of the cars. If you have their own space, it's, you know, everyone can have their own space and be safe. If you have a bike lane, the bike lanes are there, and the cars don't have to think about the bikes. If not, it's a risk. The last thing I'll say, I would really urge you also to look up the bike bus and see how much joy bikes bring to children, and I really wish I could see that in some of our neighborhoods. Thanks.
Thank you, Hamlet. Good evening.
Hi, how are y'all? I'm Kate Cassidy Duffy. I live at 245 Clover Street, and I'm here to support the Prince Corridor becoming a permanent structure. I have been in Athens since 2007, and when I was younger, I was walking and riding my bike. As soon as I had children, I no longer felt comfortable doing that and switched to a car rider. I think that the Prince Avenue has greatly bettered traffic as well. I feel safer in a car, and as Hamlin was speaking to, I drive a small car, and the large cars are finally slowing down, thank you to that. And I think we have better overall traffic control for our pedestrians. I also lived on Prince Avenue during the time when we used those orange flags to safely cross the street, and I would rather not go back to that. So, you know, let's think about that. Also, while I'm here, I want to make sure that I provide support for agenda item 22. You know, Athens is a wonderful place. I love being from Athens, and we need to make sure that we support everyone here. And that could be through active legislation to make sure that our LGBT community is safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Grace Tushak. I live at 146 South Homewood Drive. I'm here tonight to ask you to approve the permanent resurfacing and redesign of Prince Avenue. It's been a huge positive benefit to the community. This is an issue that matters not just to those of us who have choices about how we get around town, but it matters even more to people who don't. People who must walk or ride a bike out of necessity also deserve safe places to do so. Personally, I feel much safer when I'm driving on Prince Avenue. I've not experienced any delays or any other negative impacts. I also feel safer when I'm walking. Traffic is slower, and I have more separation from the vehicle traffic. Sometimes I actually wish that I lived in this neighborhood now instead of outside the loop, where I'm greatly frustrated that the rest of the Prince Avenue corridor, and especially the Hugh Logan interchange, don't allow people like me to, who would otherwise love to ride their bikes into town. Again, thank you for your time, and please approve the permanent design of Prince Avenue.
Thank you, Grace. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you all for your time. My name is Matthew Murray. I live at 250 Little Street. I'm here to speak in approval of agenda items 13, 21, and 22 in no particular order, or I guess it's number order. While I was a grad student at UGA, I biked to campus every day. Unfortunately, the neighborhood I lived in didn't have very accessible bike lanes or bike infrastructure. I was struck by cars twice. Suffering concussions both times. This delayed my degree by about 6 months, all said. It's hard to do math when you have a concussion. So I think any infrastructure in Athens for the purpose of supporting bikes and bikers is incredible. To speak on ranked choice voting, simply put, it is just mathematically better. I don't really have the time, and I don't think anybody cares that much, but if you want to look into it, please do. You can game out 100 scenarios and 1,000, 1 million, and ranked choice voting more accurately represents the will of the people than, I'm assuming we're using first past the post, but I'm not. We're not? Okay, I'm getting some head shakes. But anyway, ranked choice voting, good. Resolution for LGBTQIA people. I'm a straight cis guy. I'm chillin'. The Athens I want to be a part of is very queer. The Athens I want to be a part of accepts everyone. And the Athens that I want to be a part of provides safety and a welcoming environment. One of my friends in the last 2 weeks, 2 weeks, has already been called a freak just walking down the street because she exists in someone's public perception. That's not a city that I want to live in. I don't think that's a city she wants to live in either, but I don't know. She's not here to say. In any case, in matters of safety, there's only one way forward, and I hope that this resolution is a first step and not a last step. This is, I think, a good beginning, but I don't want it to be the end. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matthew. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Stephen Lees. I'm at 195 Greystone Terrace, and I'm speaking as a parent, also representing PFLAG of Athens area. And we are parents who have trans kids. We are parents of queer kids. They're in our schools. And we see Athens as a welcoming place. And this resolution we want to support for the LGBTQ community and the proclamation of the county as a safe haven, I think is a really important step to take to affirm the civil rights and human rights of our members, our community members, and our kids. And I know that it is not necessarily a law, but this is a good step to move in that direction to affirm those rights and to show that we are an inclusive community. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Wang. I live at 117 Lenore Avenue. I've lived in Athens for nearly 20 years, and I've been a homeowner for 13 of those years. And for all of those years, I've somehow managed to live within a block of Prince Avenue. And I believe the protected bike lanes and the road diet is the best thing that's happened to Athens traffic in all that time. I have a 5-year-old. I bike him every morning down Prince to his preschool on a trailer bike. Every evening I bike home. I take the entire bike lane from Pulaski to Millage. When the bike lane ends, I get on the sidewalk because it is unsafe to be a biker in a 2-lane Prince. I'm a courteous biker in every other way. I obey all the rules, stop at stop signs, and even use hand signals, but drivers will still swerve at you, and I've been yelled and cussed at and actively swerved at many times. When I moved to town, I worked at Daily Groceries, and from inside there, in those big windows that faced on the street onto that crosswalk, we watched for years as near misses constantly happened, close calls, side swipes. We even had a volunteer once try to cross, have a car stop for him, motion him across, and he was then struck by a vehicle that did not stop in the second lane. Now that Prince hosts even more shops and restaurants, we have even more pedestrians, and without the bike lanes, we would be facing a nightmare for bikes and pedestrians, and it will inevitably result in accidents, and I will no longer be willing to take my child onto Prince without those protected bike lanes. So I strongly recommend that Athens retains, improves, and if possible, extends the bike lanes on Prince. And I didn't come here for this, but I want to add my voice also to supporting the resolution welcoming LGBTQIA people in our community. The divisiveness is already here. We have to support these most vulnerable members of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Good
Good evening.
Hi there. My name is Dan Crittenden. I live at 160 Savannah Avenue in Newtown, and I'm here to voice my support for the making the Prince Avenue bike lanes, the improvements permanent. Recently, my partner commented for the first time in 15 years that I had a cute butt. I credit this compliment 100% to the Prince Avenue Safety Corridor and similar infrastructure projects. As it turns out, biking is a great butt workout. Since biking is much safer and easier, I bike even more now. For most of the year, my office was directly within the safety corridor on Prince Avenue. For that reason, I have daily experience walking, biking, and driving within the corridor and beyond. Based on my experience, the safety of all forms of transportation within the corridor have improved since the project has been put in place. Statistically, I'm also told the corridor has dramatically improved from a safety perspective. As a daily corridor user, I have not noticed any negative externalities from this change. I urge you to vote in favor of making these improvements permanent so that I can more safely maintain a biker butt for my partner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for the workout advice. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you all for your service. My name is Kristen Morales. I'm at 338 Satula Avenue. I honestly was motivated to speak tonight when I saw the image of the proposed changes at the intersection of Prince and Pulaski. It was so cool. I'm just saying, like I was just like, wow, because here's the thing. My 8-year-old loves to bike downtown, and he's a rule follower, and we get to that point where you turn onto Pulaski Street, and he's using his hand signals and everything, and he's always a little bit thrown about where you go and how you cross and all this and that. And when I saw that rendering, I thought, oh my God, finally, like this is the last piece to this great puzzle. And then somebody mentioned that the entire corridor and the changes that had been put in place were actually in jeopardy. And I was like kind of flabbergasted that that would even be something that would be considered, because the sea change that has happened along Prince Avenue in the last couple years is just mind-blowing, and it's been amazingly positive. And so to make that change, and I guess the change to Prince Avenue, and also to that extent too, the stop sign on Lyndon, and also number 22 on the agenda, they're all connected, and that these are all ways that we're supporting our community. And so if we have an option to make something better for someone and to show support for someone, then why wouldn't we just do that? It just seems like such an easy decision. And so I just wanted to take the time to show my support to all of these different proposals tonight, and trust that you make the best decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. Good evening.
Good evening. David Lyle, 178 Virginia Avenue. I came here tonight to speak on item 13. But the presence here of someone from our community who I know and have a lot of respect that they, for the contribution that I know they make to our community, prompted me strongly to also speak in favor of item 22. But on item 13, I own a bicycle, which I would never ride, wouldn't ride for $1,000 on Athens streets, because it's just not a risk that I'm willing to take. But living a block from Prince Avenue, every day, every time I leave my house, I have to either walk or drive on Prince. And, if there were some kind of trade-off here between bikes and pedestrians and cars, that would be a trade-off that you would have to resolve. But in my experience, there isn't one. The Prince Avenue is now much better for pedestrians. Drivers clearly understand they're on an urban street. They're not on Jefferson Road. They're not on Highway 129. They're on Prince Avenue. And also, it's better for cars. It really is. There's so many streets up and down Prince that they have a stop sign. And getting out of those neighborhoods on to 4 lanes of whizzing traffic was really hard. And one of the staple memes of one of our local comedian / bartenders is the nightmare that is turning left on Millage, it's now made it imaginable that you can come out of Boulevard and get on Millage without it being a huge deal. So, this has been going on for 20 years. We had the flags. We had cars crashing into the grit. You've gotten it right now, and so I would urge you not to go backwards. Wrap it up. Let's declare victory on this and move on to other problems that this community has. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Clint Moore. I'm at 228 Parkway Drive over in Five Points. And I have some comments about item 13, but I first want to express my support for the resolutions on item 21 and 22. I mean, how exciting would that be if in a multi-way race, the outcome of the election more closely reflected the will of the voters than it does now? And by the way, getting that cheaply than we currently can by avoiding runoff elections. Item 22, I feel that this community dies a little bit when any one of us is singled out for who they love or how they appear to us. So I encourage your support on those two resolutions. Item 13, as I said, I live in the Five Points area. I'm a little bit far removed from Prince Avenue, but I use that corridor a lot, either as a car driver, sometimes as a pedestrian, or sometimes as a bike rider. And I've seen a horrific bike collision on that stretch where the rider was airborne, kind of horrifyingly. I also spend an embarrassing amount of money, in the businesses on that corridor. So so even though I live a little bit far from it, it's a corridor that's near and dear to my heart, and I use it extensively. The decline in the number of crashes on that roadway speaks for itself, I believe. And with fewer crashes, there are fewer personal injuries, less financial personal hardships for people. And I think all that is a good thing. And also, I've been standing in line, inspired by the number of stories I've heard of people actually getting out on their bikes and using the corridor more. That's astounding. So anyway, as it is, I'm a big fan of making the changes on Prince Avenue permanent, and I certainly hope you vote that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Clint. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Stacy Fox, and I'm here in my capacity as a member of the National Board of Governors for the Human Rights Campaign and as CEO of the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute and a former resident here in Athens-Clarke County. I think speaking in favor of agenda item number 22, especially after this year of fighting 23 different legislative attacks against our LGBTQIA community in the Georgia General Assembly this year, an action like creating a sanctuary city is needed more than ever. And as an economist, I think it's also important to point out that protecting our LGBTQIA community research shows that sanctuary cities are good for our economy. There is significant spending potential from our community. There's also human capital potential. When people feel safe from discrimination at work, they can show up more widely and more deeply in our economy. And also, finally, research shows that there has been business innovation potential that shows up from protecting our LGBTQIA community, both in creating more market trends and business innovation. So I encourage you to support that resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Good evening.
Good evening. Hi there. My name is Tyler. I live at 750 Gaines School Road, but I'm also known as, when I'm in drag, ZZ Fox. I am one of Gen Z's queer youth who is here to show my support for the queer community in Athens. As a child, I knew I was queer and never actually truly got the support that I needed. I was bullied, I was assaulted, and I have been failed by my community in the past. When I moved to Georgia, I was about 17. I moved specifically to Athens when I was 19. Around that time, I'd come to grow and learn about what community truly means, and a part of that is knowing that there is a wide diverse of people as we all coexist as one. In the past, I have been assaulted and cussed at while I was downtown for being a visibly queer individual. I have been at performances when we had protesters, and there was one situation where the police had told the protesters, hey, you guys are causing a commotion. We really need you to go because you are disrupting. Instead, the protesters decided to mace us in the face. That night, my contacts that I currently wear almost melted into my eyes, causing an issue. I am urging everyone here to please show your support, not just when it's easy during Pride Month, but do show your support even through the thick and the thin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tyler. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is C. Durden. I reside at 225 Wiltshire Drive. I'm voicing my strong support for Resolution 22 for Athens to become an LGBTQIA+ sanctuary city. I'm a therapist who works at the Getting Real Counseling Center, where over 90% of my clients are queer, as am I. The rising national fascism and outspoken hatred for my community, especially for my trans siblings, necessitates the clear vocal support of us, as well as material action. I urge you to pass this proposal and continue the good work that makes a sanctuary city both in name and in action. I also want to say thank you to every single person tonight who has vocalized their support for this measure. I was surprised by how many people were in support of it, and it gives me hope for our really amazing city. Thank you.
Thank you, C. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Nell Warrens. I live at 314 Georgetown. And I came to speak in support of the resolution to request the state of Georgia to allow for ranked choice voting. I believe this process will just strengthen our democracy, and it allows more nuanced positions by candidates. And it's also been able to show an increase in the election of representatives who better reflect their constituents. While I'm up here, I also would very strongly like to support Resolution 22 and Resolution 13. I grew up in Athens, and when I was 10 years old, our neighbor was struck while commuting by bicycle on Prince Avenue. And he barely survived, and he had pretty severe brain damage. And as a cyclist myself, it's really important that we have safe places to be able to commute, to work and school and all of those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Noelle Heatherland. I am a former Athens-Clarke County resident and a person who was born and raised in Georgia. I do now reside in Atlanta. I'm the statewide outreach manager for the organization Georgia Equality, and I have a social work background. Athens will always hold a very special place in my heart, and it's somewhere I enjoy spending my time and money and value feeling safe in. I grew up in a town in Georgia that was not safe to be a queer person. When I came to attend the University of Georgia from that town, it quite literally saved my life. I went from being a suicidal teenager to finding a place where I could volunteer, exist, contribute to the community, and experience belonging. I am proud to be an ongoing part of the Athens-Clarke County community, and I hope that you all will vote on the side of inclusion, recognizing our shared humanity and that we are all people who deserve to be able to live our lives safely. There are people here whose lives could be saved because of your votes on this resolution and showing your public support for our lives. Your voices of support right now mean more than they ever have for so many of us. I also, and I might cry because I just want to say thank you to all the community members who showed up for a different resolution tonight. And even if they weren't a part of our community, use their voice to speak for their LGBTQIA+ neighbors. And in that same vein, I hope those folks receive the safer bike lanes that they are requesting. Because regardless of identity, we are all connected in our shared humanity. Please vote for this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Noelle. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Zena Rose Curall. I live at 230 Burney Street. My trans spouse and I moved to Athens 2 years ago because we were looking for a small southern city with a strong, vibrant, diverse LGBTQ community. and there's not many. I work in gender-affirming healthcare, and I'm also a community organizer. I plan monthly events for the queer community in Athens called Athens Queer Night, and honestly, I worry a lot about our safety when we gather in public. As politicians across the country attack and scapegoat us, we see rises in hate crimes and public hostility toward the queer community. As such, sanctuary city resolutions like this one are critical because queer people across the country are seeking accepting, safe communities. This resolution signals to our community that we are safe in Athens, and it tells bigots that their hatred and violence won't be tolerated here. But this resolution is just a starting point, and I'm looking forward to working with you all on policies and plans to keep us safe. And then also stack rank voting.
Thank you, Zena. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Lira Castillo, and I currently reside at 490 South Barnett Shoals Road. I am here to advocate on behalf of my trans and queer friends who do not have the same privilege as me as a straight woman to be able to be comfortable and speak in these sort of spaces. I have resided here since 2019 and consistently have been showing tons of support and love from the LGBT community in moments where I felt defeated, felt ostracized in the community as well. And I just wanted to advocate and really push for this discussion to be brought up more often. It shouldn't be taboo. Our fellow queer folks should not be scared to talk about these subjects out in public, should not be scared to identify as themselves. I have friends who are considering moving out of the state, moving out of this town, because they are scared for their life at what might happen. They know the type of violence that occurs to people like them, and I don't think it's right. I have seen Athens become united. The most colorful day I saw in Athens was during the first annual Pride Parade. I saw everyone walk down, sorry, I'm getting a little emotional because I love my friends. I have never seen that type of unity in Athens. Seeing all the people march down, there was no ounce of violence. It was all colorful. Everyone was just in love with the fact that they were able to represent themselves. And I think that's a basic human right. And in addition, so many queer folks are participating in small businesses here in Athens, whether it's the tattoo shop, the piercing shop, your local coffee shop down the road. They're everywhere in this community, and they consistently contribute to the economy as well. And this, becoming a sanctuary city opens the door for, easier access to healthcare. I currently have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and my trans friend just told me about a medication that they're currently taking. Found out I could take it too, and it's been working. So, having those open discussions not only benefits the queer community, but benefits the general Athens community as well. So I just wanted to advocate on their behalf.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Mary Moore. I live at 228 Parkway Drive. And I'm, first of all, I want to thank Commissioner Houle for encouraging me, who is going to be a little lazy tonight and just submit something online, to actually come down here and show up. So that's why I'm here. I first fully want to show my support for making the Prince Avenue bike lane and safety improvements permanent. I traverse that section of Prince Avenue several times a week, most often as a driver, and occasionally as a pedestrian, and never on a bike. I also attend a church that's located on that section of Prince Avenue. The current improvements have proven to be effective at slowing traffic and creating a safer roadway for cars, bikes, and pedestrians. The data speaks for itself in terms of the reduction in accidents. I can't imagine why the ACC, mayor, and commissioners would even consider going backward to speeding traffic on a narrow in-town corridor. When we're all used to the current improvements as they are now, it's sort of a no-brainer. The improvements have proven to be safer and, I believe, better for business, as I am much more comfortable crossing Prince Avenue, always at a light, to enjoy the shops and restaurants that are in the area. So I urge you to please don't go backward at this point. I also want to speak in support of the LGBTQIA+ resolution. And I wasn't planning to speak about this. I didn't know it was on the agenda. But I think if you live and work in this town and you frequent the restaurants in your downtown and you pay attention to people and you really observe what's going on, you see a lot of fear in people's faces. I witnessed this personally through the last month as a Clarke County election worker, interacting with thousands of people over a 3.5-week period, and I saw a lot of fear in front of me, and it's heartbreaking. So I think this resolution is one way that we as a community, one small way perhaps, that we as a community can tell our neighbors and our siblings that they are seen, that they are loved, and that they matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Scott Long. I live at 180 Clifton Drive, and as the executive director for Bike Athens, I work at 1190 Prince Avenue, right across the street from the hospital. And I'm having a pretty good day. I get to enjoy adding my voice to all the ones that you've heard tonight in support of making the Prince Avenue improvements better and making sure that we keep them because they have reduced crashes and created a safer space for all users, drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians alike. And I'd also like to support items number 21 and 22. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening. Gravity never stops.
Good evening. Lauren Blaze, 140 Inglewood Avenue. I'm chair of the Athens Emotion Commission to implement the bike and pedestrian master plan. I thought I was going to come up here and remind y'all of where we have come from with regards to Prince Avenue, the 20 years, 30 years of advocacy, the 6 or 7 studies that the Prince Avenue user group poured over, their tiered list of recommendations, the pilot project that was the first, or one of the first of its kind in our county about, I thought I was going to talk about like the 1,600 survey results and the 1,800 data points that we took during those 2 months in 2022. But I think tonight, the Prince Avenue corridor speaks for itself. And so I think there's maybe 2 takeaways that I want to impart upon y'all. And one is that we're not just talking about people on bikes. We're also, there's been a whole lot more people using other micro-mobility. Commissioner Link, I believe you have a personal scooter. So this is not just about ability. E-bikes have enabled people to traverse our hills, which were once thought, you know, a little bit too difficult. So that's the one thing. And the other thing is, I hope what you see is the opportunity and the possibility through our pilot projects. The Prince Avenue 3-lane project. The 3 lanes, it's not our first 3-lane. We have so many 3 lanes in Athens, right? We've 3-laned Baxter, Lumpkin, Dougherty, which is just an extension of Prince. That was 3-laned. Apparently Millage was not 3 lanes at some point. Anyone remember that? I don't know. Okay. But this was our first 3-lane separated, protected bike lanes. We don't have to have these, we don't have to just do these big projects like, like North Avenue. And there's part of me that really regrets the way that went down, because that was a lot of possibility. And I think just communication got lost there, and there's been some difficulties with that project. And I'm sad about that. But this project has been, I think initially it was just $250,000. So over the next couple of years, I hope that you guys will be thinking about ways that we can bring something like this to your community, something that we just try, see how it goes, get the data points, get the feedback, and respond to that. And maybe it stays, maybe it goes, maybe we get something as great as Prince Avenue. Maybe you have a bunch of people coming up here thanking you on a Tuesday night instead of yelling at you. So, thank y'all.
Thank you, Lauren. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michael Songster. I live at 1450 West Hancock Avenue, and I would like to thank you for your patience. A lot of folks out here tonight, and it's great to see them, but I understand it's a long night. I didn't know the resolution for ranked choice voting was on tonight's agenda. I am fully in support of that. Aren't we all tired of paying for runoffs? But I am here to express my support for Prince Avenue. I've lived, along the Prince Avenue corridor pretty much my whole adult life. I drive that corridor probably 5 times a day, going between my house and job sites and job sites and job sites and job sites to suppliers, and it is it's really hard to express how much better it is of an experience for someone driving that corridor. It's incredible. Like, it's night and day. The first day it went up, it changed, and it's just great. So I encourage us to keep it. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening.
Hi, Justin Bond, 140 Seminole Avenue, a block off Prince Avenue. We actually interrupted our dinner to come down here. I know it's not, you guys probably haven't eaten, but we jumped up from the table, ran down here because someone said there was even a remote possibility of this not being made permanent. And I just think that anyone who's experienced Prince Avenue, that would never cross their mind. It's made downtown, it's made the university campus accessible to people in the Boulevard area, either through car, bike, or pedestrian. We use it every day in every one of those ways. And I brought my son here, who's the future of Athens. If you don't listen to me, listen to him. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. Good evening.
Hey, Waylon Vaughn, also 140 Seminole Avenue. I'm a local high school student. I go to Clark Central, and for me, and especially my friends too, biking is freedom, man. Forget a driver's license. We get a new bike, it's awesome. And having the Prince Avenue bike lane makes it so much easier to access downtown and to meet up with friends there. And it's really just makes my experience of the city a lot better, and I think a lot of my friends would agree too. I have friends who come from 5 Points and bike down the Prince Avenue bike lanes. It's great. And also, just while I'm up here, I wasn't planning on speaking about this, but I will say I'm really lucky to go to a very diverse school and see lots of different kinds of people and lots of different kinds of love, and I think it'd be great to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Waylon. Good evening.
Good evening, Nunnally Benzing, 140 Seminole. I am here to make Prince, to show my support for Prince Avenue bike lane being permanent. Yes, I was talking to somebody offhandedly on a drive home 30 minutes ago and thought we need to come and show our support for this. And I didn't know what other great agenda items were also ranked voting, and diversity is something that is very important to us too. So, thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Jason Perry. I live at 170 Hall Street. That's Hall, not Hull. And I'm the board president of Bike Athens. And I want to throw my weight behind item 22. The anti-trans hate machine is well-funded, well-organized, and but also tiny. And when more people like me speak up against it, it gets scared. So more people need to do that. Prince Avenue is awesome. And as a longtime volunteer with Bike Athens, I lead the monthly joy rides, and if you're not familiar with it, it's a monthly ride, 6 p.m. last Friday of the month, and we do it year round now. And we lead people of all ages, abilities, experience in Athens. We have a lot of new people who come to Athens with their bike and they want to learn how to get around. It's a really comfortable way to learn the city by bike. And now that our shop is at 1190 Prince Avenue, which is beyond this corridor, we do a lot of those rides along Prince Avenue to get into town or get over to the Firefly Trail. It's a critical part of getting around. And so the experience of leading 30 to 40 people into those bike lanes and feeling confident that my volunteers behind me and Scott who you heard from is bringing up the rear. It's so much more comfortable getting large groups of people like that. I know that that's not the point of those bike lanes, but it does show you the capability of getting more people through that corridor on a bike. The experience going from right before millage to getting back into the legacy configuration is night and day. We're used to being able to shepherd people through things like that, but it's scary, and we have to kind of pep people up to get through it. So once again, thank you for implementing the pilot. It worked. It's awesome. Needs some improvements as far as reconfiguration at Pulaski, and I understand that the project would also involve synchronization of the light at Barber, which I think would help with some of the stacking that some people might be concerned about. So I'll stop rambling. Thanks. Oh, ranked choice voting is also rad.
Thanks, Jason. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joe Aubrey. I live at 515 King Avenue. I'm here to talk on Resolution 13, but I'd also like to vocalize my support for Resolutions 21 and 22 as well. I grew up in Athens, Georgia. And growing up, when I was old enough to ride a bike around, my mom had two rules for me: stay off Broad and stay off Prince. Tonight, I rode here, and I will continue to ride here as long as it is safe to do so. It's a lot of anecdotal evidence from my own life, as many other people have said, and I'd like to echo everything that has been said about the improvements as a pedestrian, as a cyclist, and as a driver. Many people who have spoken tonight on this issue have called the Prince Avenue improvements, and we don't say that carelessly. They are improvements to the city. Athens, Georgia, unfortunately, currently has the bike score of 17 out of 100. That's pretty abysmal. That puts us at 39th in the state, and that puts us at over 1,500th in the country. And that's only in the country. That is only including cities of similar size. Fortunately, the Prince Avenue improvements have improved our bike score from 15 total up to that number of 17. As well as many people have spoken tonight, average speed has come down on Prince Avenue. Prior to the road diet, average speed was around 37 miles per hour. The current average speed is 31 miles an hour. A car to bike or car pedestrian crash at 30 miles per hour have a 10% fatality chance. When you increase that speed by 10 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour, they have a 40% mortality chance. And that speed only continues to increase when dangerous road diets such as 2 lanes of same direction travel are implemented, as cars are found to jockey for position quite often. Per mile bike infrastructure is also one of the biggest financial benefits a city of our size can have. There's a 12.6% increase to retail employment per mile along bike infrastructure corridors, as well as a 172% increase found for retail sales in cities of our size, found in a New York State independent DOT study, as well as the state of Ohio independent study. Thank you so much for your time. Obviously, I believe in this, and I believe that it should continue to be improved. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeff. Good evening.
Hello, Mayor Gertz and Commissioners. I'm Teresa Friedlander, and I live at 115 Middleton Place here in Athens. I serve as Vice Chair of Athens in Motion with Lauren and Alan and Randy, whom you heard earlier. And I am just here to say that I support option 1 for the agenda item 13, I believe it is, TSPLOST 2018, Project 16, Prince Avenue Corridor Improvements, subprojects number 1 and number 5. I love serving on Athens in Motion because I've gotten to know so many wonderful people, and it's also given me such an appreciation for our staff and the consultants that work on the teams with them. The plans that you have been given, that you'll be voting on, reflect years of community involvement with the staff and the consultants to achieve that road diet that's so successful, that so many people have spoken in favor of here. It is a short span, about 3,000 linear feet, and I know that staff have performed various studies before and after the installation of the temporary measures, and there really have been no material changes in the level of service experienced by the drivers, but there has been a great improvement in safety. The vehicle speeds are lower and the number of crashes are lower, and that is so important. So if you vote to approve option 1, that demonstrates your commitment to keeping all Athens residents and visitors safe while moving about the county. The improvements shown in the proposed preliminary design that you'll be voting on will replace the temporary bike lane buffers with more robust infrastructure, which will further protect all users of this complete street, clarifying driving routes and adding aesthetically pleasing streetscapes. So I just want to say that Athens-Clarke County has a strategic goal that states we should all be able to move safely around the county. And there are 3 strategies in particular that this supports. One is to improve, expand, and maintain sidewalks, shared use paths, and bike facilities to provide greater opportunities for residents to use active transportation safely. Strategy D, to create more usable, aesthetically pleasing corridor connections between residential and commercial areas. I would say that Prince Avenue qualifies there. And strategy E, to enhance safety for all modes of transportation. So I'm going to close out my remarks and go back to my seat. But first, I have a little show and tell for you.
Thank you, Teresa.
Athens in Motion. We redesigned our logo a
Appreciate
while
you
ago.
coming tonight.
See? And we have made these beautiful safety nets. And we give these out. This is an adult extra large, and this is a child's size. We give these out at public engagement opportunities. And anyway, thank you very much for listening to me this evening. Good night.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name's Gabrielle Jones. I live at 117 Redstone Drive in East Athens. Please pardon my tears. This subject matter is very important to me, and also I'm a water sign. I'd like to speak on item number 22. I wasn't planning on speaking this evening, but I was deeply moved by many of my peers. I am very, very new to Athens. I actually moved here this past year in March. And I love it so much. It's a very, very unique and very special city. I moved here from Atlanta after living there for a large portion of my life with the knowledge that Athens was a small town that was a safe and accessible place for queer people and Hispanic people, communities of which I am both a part. I would like to actually speak about my husband this evening, who is working and he couldn't make it. We are both queer individuals who can, for all intents and purposes, pass as very straight. My husband is a 6th-generation Navy veteran and a industrial maintenance electrician working in an incredibly blue-collar field. For a majority of our relationship, I have seen him have to mask and closet his true identity in many of those spaces where he feels like he relates to people the most. Veterans have a very difficult time interacting and relating to civilians after being enlisted. Since moving to Athens, he hasn't had to do that as much. And I have seen a person who has spent a lifetime struggling with addiction and depression be happy for the first time in a very, very long time. And that, I think, cannot be understated. When queer people are pictured, I think it's often a very stereotypical sort of loud, alternative, blue hair type of cartoonish image. And I would like to remind everyone that you never really know who is or isn't part of the LGBTQ community. People of all classes, backgrounds, and races are part of these groups, and when one of us eats, all of us eat. I would also like to state the fact that I work downtown. I work at Pain and Wonder. I spend a lot of time downtown, and I have seen an upsetting amount of neo-Nazi symbols be posted around downtown. Just the other day on Washington, I saw a sticker of a black sun
if any of you are familiar, and our pride flag was recently vandalized and ripped down just earlier this year. Athens is a wonderful place, but there's still always room for improvement and protection. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Good evening.
You good? Good evening. Commissioners, my name is Tim Moore, and I live at 125 Barrington Drive. That's actually over in District 1, Mr. Davenport's district. I wanted to start there in my comment, but circumstances have changed after events that happened today at my job, which I just came from. I work at the Globe in downtown, which, if you can believe it, just got hit by a car today. I don't know. I mean, it happens to people. It happens to businesses too. A large pickup truck drove straight into the wall along Clayton. And while I can say that driving cars into buildings is an anomalous thing in Athens, let alone downtown, unsafe driving is all too common in the city, and that goes for Prince Avenue. When we were all coming down from our excitement, the conversation turned to Prince Avenue, and we pretty much all agreed that the road was never really that safe. One of my coworkers who served at the Grit, now Emmy Squared, said that customers sitting outside would worry about something like what had happened at the Globe today, with a car running off the road and onto the curb. Another biker friend of mine said that while he has qualms with overall integration of like the parking design, the plan, he heavily endorses safer expanded bike ped infrastructure. Now, while I don't live on a street with bike ped improvements and traffic calming measures, I've come here tonight to speak to the concerns of people who use this kind of infrastructure more than I do. And as you weigh adding to the agenda to make the Prince Avenue bike ped plan permanent, I'd ask you to consider why we should allow cars and automobile drivers to claw back any more of our streets from people who are trying to cut costs and live healthy by walking and biking in their own neighborhoods, be they along, my neighborhood street of Barnett Shoals, or along North Avenue, or along Prince Avenue. And at this moment, I also just want to say, all right, I'd like to address items 21 and 22. Speaking as another straight, white, cis man, I believe that Athens is for everyone. And to this end, I think that I stand as an ally to the people in this community. All the people, LGBTQIA+, and their concerns need to be heard. And however they choose to present or to identify, that's a choice. And the same thing as ranked choice voting. We need better representation of political views in Athens, and we need to eliminate runoffs. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Hello. Hey, y'all. I think I'm the last one. Congrats. So, hello. My name is Ellie Swinson. I live at 140 Saxon Woods Drive, and I debated all night about whether or not I was going to speak, because usually when I come before this body, I am very prepared and very researched and have lots of arguments. And I don't have any of those things for you tonight. I just have me. And I come to you as a transportation planner who is also a queer woman and an active voter. So there are 3 resolutions tonight that speak to those parts of who I am. As a transportation planner, I very much believe people have a right to get where they are going safely and deserve a choice in how they do that. Please keep the Prince Avenue improvements permanent. As a queer woman, I believe I have a right to be here. I believe my partner has a right to be here. And I think that words matter and that we are in a world where safety is not to be taken for granted. And even just a resolution of saying we are welcome here, you've heard this from many people tonight, will save lives. And I think that is worth putting pen to paper on and to claim with your names and your voices tonight with your vote. Please pass that resolution. As an active voter, I believe that our voices deserve to be heard and heard accurately, and ranked choice voting is, I think, the best path forward for that. So please pass that resolution as well. And that's all I have for you. Congrats on making it through.
Thank you, Ellie. Is there anyone here to speak to either old or new business this evening? Seeing none, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll be back in our seats at 8:36, everyone. Thank you to everyone who provided public input. We appreciate that dearly. We will now go to commission discussion of these old and new business items. And the first item we will discuss is item 2 that Commissioner Link requested be removed from the consent agenda. So, Commissioner?
Thank you. Sorry, I just shoved a granola bar in my face. Yeah, I just wanted to take this off just to acknowledge thanking staff for moving forward with this quickly. That Lyndon and Dubose intersection has been a problem for quite a few years, and I had it go under analysis several years ago, and it didn't meet the standards. More recently, we got it under analysis again, and it did meet the standards. I think it had some sightline issues. There's been a lot more activity in that area. We've had a new office building go up on Dubose and Chase Street. We've had some students move into the neighborhood, so we have more traffic. We have small cottages occupied by multiple automobile drivers. There's been construction in the neighborhood. And I think most drastically, a new property owner on Chase Street fenced in the property line, so students walking to Burks Elementary can no longer cut through, and they're forced to go down Dubose Avenue, which has no sidewalks, has a lot more cars on it because there's some student housing on it, and it is a straight shot between Chase Street and Lyndon, and it's getting some of that office traffic too. So I've asked them to take a better look. We had a meeting with Boulevard neighbors and some TPW staff, and they're looking at some other areas in the neighborhood, and I believe a TSPLOST proposal will be coming through. But I just want to ask us to reconsider our stop sign standards, because there are plenty of places where we can't really put sidewalks because we have such narrow front yards, and speed bumps aren't always an option because of they inhibit driveways and mailboxes and things like that. So I know it's not kind of kosher to consider them as traffic calming devices, but they do make traffic stop. So we might need to broaden our view when it comes to calming traffic in our neighborhoods. So with that, I just ask that we put this back on the consent agenda.
Everybody okay with this back on consent? Any further remarks? All right, so 2 is back on consent. I'm going to make a note of that here. All right, and we will move forward to item 11, which is the continued consideration of the transit transfer facility. I know Commissioner Davenport, you wanted to engage with staff a little bit about some of the safety measures they'd be able to implement as they put this in the corner of Whit Davis and Lexington.
Yeah. I had a meeting with staff, and I thought it was just going to be county manager, that's the intern county manager, Jones and I, but it was a table room full of people. It was just kind of shocking, but it was a fruitful meeting that we had. So there were some concerns in the community about putting a bus transfer station in Southeast Clarke Park. And I want to thank staff for going over the options that we have. And I am going to support this as it is. But just to leave it off of consent for further discussion from community members.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any others? All right, we'll move on to item 12. 12 is also old business. This was the SPLOST 2020 Project 28, the Mental Health Recovery Facility project. This is the general contract award. The input on this item?
Consent.
Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I'm happy to put on consent. I just wanted to clarify with the manager if the timeline that's outlined in Facts and Issues 17 is still accurate. And then also, I think my understanding is that maybe there's another either piece to this agenda item or a separate related agenda item forthcoming.
There's going to be an IGA with Advantage Behavioral Health related to, y'all committed the ARPA fund. We have to enter into an agreement with them where we obligate the funds. We're just waiting for comments back from the executive director and their attorney, and I'm not sure if we'll do that with this agenda item or a separate agenda item.
Okay, so it might be attached to this or it might be separate.
I want to talk about that.
And your question related to timeline?
Yeah, the timeline, and then also, I guess, whether the IGA that Attorney Drake spoke to is going to be attached to this agenda item in the future or come through as a separate agenda item.
I believe should be attached, as long as
It's
Attorney
fine.
Drake's okay
Yeah,
with it.
I'm fine with that.
Well,
Okay.
we'll figure that out. But as far as the timeline, you just want to know if the timeline is,
We're still on track. Are we still on track?
yes, we're still on track.
Good deal. Well, I guess with another key piece to this coming, I guess it makes sense to leave it off consent, but I'm hoping that we'll move forward on it at the meeting.
Commissioner Fisher?
So we'll vote then in December then? So if we're on track, I mean, you said we're on track, so would it be for us to vote for this on December or we have
Yes,
to
sir.
wait?
December.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll have everything in place then?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
And by on track, I mean that timeline that's outlined says that
2026 is
construction
what
would
you-
begin in early 2025 and be completed by mid-2026. So just so we kind of have an idea of when this facility will finally be online.
And this is generally an estimated timeline, unforeseen circumstances, but yes, sir, this is a good timeline.
Pending no discovery of rock.
Close to the river. Anyone else? All right, we're going to move on to new business. Item 13 is the Prince Avenue corridor improvements, the sort of permanent installation, replacing the temporary measures that have been in place. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I'm going to move that we put this on consent, and I want to thank all the people that came out to speak in favor of this. It's nice to have people lining up to talk for hours and hours about something we're doing right, for once. And I think it's clear that, this project has been a success. It was initially a pilot project and had a vote for more permanence, and now there are even more permanent improvements. I use these bike lanes every other day. I get back and forth to my job on campus on them, and they've been transformational for me in my life in a one-car household. I'm someone who can't really ride a bike. I have an inner ear condition and balance issues. I ride a scooter, which has become something of a mobility device for me. And having that safe facility to ride it on has really transformed how I get around and given me a lot more freedom. And I just want to talk a little bit about the sense of community. And a couple people touched on this. It's even if I were driving back and forth to campus, it takes me much less time on my scooter to get there because I can ride right up to the door. I don't have to park and walk halfway across campus. But honestly, it takes me a little bit longer because often I stop and talk to people along the way because I'm seeing people face to face, eye to eye. I run into neighbors, I run into old friends, I run into people I haven't seen in years. I run into strangers and have a conversation. I've been flagged down twice just in the past couple weeks in the bike lanes by fellow cyclists asking me to come out to this meeting to support these lanes. One person knew who I was, the other one was like, didn't. I was like, yeah, I know all about it. I'll be behind the rail. So yeah, it's been transformational, and I've also seen the businesses and new businesses come to that corridor, people sitting outside and eating, people picking their kids, driving their kids on the back of bikes to pick them up at preschool. And walking. I mean, I also walk and cross that road frequently, and it was a terrifying experience before this road diet, before this road right-sizing happened. Now you don't have to fear for your life when you cross the road. You have one lane to cross, a median, and one other lane to cross. Before, when there were two lanes in both directions, you didn't see a car coming at you from the other lane that may or may not be stopping. And I really, really, really wish that this project had come up for a vote with all these people who have been experiencing it and living it for going on 3 years now, I think, supporting it and talking about how it's transformed their lives, not just from a mobility aspect, but from a community aspect. I wish this had come up for a vote before we had our vote on the North Avenue right-sizing. I think that, we might have had other considerations if we had heard this kind of testimony from people who've actually experienced this kind of transformation. And you know, we didn't have all the time in the world like we had for this. You know, we did, with the federal grant, we didn't have the opportunity to go through the pilot project like we did with this. I really wish we had. I kind of wonder if we can. I'd love to hear from staff about that. But yeah, I would like to see this go on consent.
Mayor.
Commissioner Fisher, Commissioner Hool, Commissioner Culpepper.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the community support on Prince Avenue. I do want to make, and I talked to some residents there, and I also talked to Commissioner Link. I do want to make a couple observations, and I want to address this to our staff. When you're coming out of Hill, Clarke, and Harris, trying to go west, it's difficult to get out. So I'm hoping we're going to make some improvements where people view will not be speed where they can't get out. So I think it's important that if you're trying to go back west, turning left off of Harris, Cobb, and Hill Street is difficult to do right now. And also with the SIP lines, making sure that we, take those things up and put something better down. And the other thing is making sure that our first responders can be able to get by. Last Thursday, I'm coming on Prince Avenue, coming down at the worst time, 4:30. An ambulance get behind me. I can't get over. So we need to make sure we have provisions where our fire trucks possible or ambulance can get by. So just making sure that we take a look at that when we, look at reconfiguration. Make sure that's in place. But make sure those side streets that people be able to get out and won't get hit. Or we put in a no left turn. Maybe that may be the answer, I don't know, but we need to take a look at that. So.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Hool.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I really think we had the most turnout I've ever seen at an agenda-setting meeting. So I do appreciate all the support we had for this and some other items. Yeah, I'm hopeful that we'll move forward with this. I think it's proven itself worthy, and I'm hoping that once this is made permanent, maybe we can revisit the conversation with GDOT about extending them further down Prince to at least Normaltown, which I know was the original vision. And I did just want to note, if anything that colleagues heard tonight has them reconsidering the actions taken on North Ave, anyone besides me, I guess, anyone who voted for that can make a motion to reconsider at the outset of the next meeting. So that is an option if people do feel so moved.
Mr. Culpepper.
Yeah, I greatly appreciate all the people coming out tonight and speaking about it. I would like to take it off consent. I'm for it. I don't have any questions about it, but I think without having the full commission here, I think we might ought to take it off consent and let them have some comments on it.
Commissioner Davenport?
Yeah, just one quick question for staff. I just want to make sure the little teeth are going to be concrete now, but are they, and if I missed this,
It's the last page.
It's the last page.
Has a drawing.
Is it rounded?
Yeah.
Okay.
Question was, is there a soft edge or is it a sharp edge?
Yeah,
On the divider?
I just have, and I trust staff, but just the rounded edge with that amount of traffic on Prince Avenue has a little bit of concern when it comes to a reckless driver just veering off. And with one of the good things about the teeth is the fact that it will flatten the tire. With but with a rounded edge, a tire can easily,
Take a look at the drawing.
But
It's kind of like.
yeah, I saw that. But anyway, just staff comments on the rounded concrete barriers for the bike lanes.
Yes, sir, the precast curb is going to be significantly better on tires than the dragon teeth, if you will.
Okay.
It's more of like a triangle.
Commissioner Hool?
I think if I'm understanding Commissioner Davenport correctly, and I happen to agree with him on this point, it's pretty deep in the weeds, but it might be important. The barrier that we're talking about, the curbing, and once it's concrete, the more rounded it is, the less safe it is for the users of the bike lane or whatever other mobility device they want to use, and then whatever pedestrians are on the other side of that. So I think maybe what he's asking for, and what I would also be interested in, is a sharper or a steeper curb. Yeah.
Okay.
Not the kind of jagged thing that was flattening people's tires, but just something that's hard for a wheel to get over. Whereas like a very rounded curb is just easy to roll right over.
I would also note there will be a vertical, I don't know what they're called, flags, like, I'm sorry. There will be also an additional barrier on top of the curb that will
It
provide
might be
additional
helpful
safety.
just for commissioners to get some of the technical specs from DPW, you know, given that these are in common use elsewhere, some in Atlanta, off Piedmont that I can think of distinctly. So I'm sure we could probably see some other applications and can understand.
Flex post, yes, thank you. The
how
flex
those operate.
posts.
Yeah, so the thing about a flex post is it flexes right out of the way for whatever vehicle pummels into it, right? So I think, yeah, again, I mean,
Sure.
you know, this isn't me saying we necessarily need to change anything, but yeah, definitely some more information on how easy is it for a vehicle to just roll right over whatever's going to be permanently installed.
So they're about 6 inches high, 12 inches wide, 8 feet long per precast. Are you asking for something that's bigger?
Well, what I'm personally asking, well, I'm gonna approve this. I think it's a great improvement to Prince Avenue. Just my concern is if a car is a reckless driver or whatever, even with a 6-inch lift from the ground, that tire is gonna make it, especially if you're in a big truck. There's a lot of big trucks in Athens.
Sure.
So other than the little flexible little things that'll be sticking up from this, my concern is there a better design to protect that pedestrian, that biker, than this 12 by 8 by 6?
We can certainly look into that, for sure.
Thank you.
I remember that came up in the walkthroughs too.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Well, I want to thank staff greatly for their ongoing work. I like some of the component pieces of what will be in the permanent design, particularly the rain garden. I think the barriers, the permanent barriers, will be stronger, having seen them in action. And I'll just say, as a 30-year resident of the corridor and 3 different homes on Meggs, Church, and Pulaski Street, where I've never lived more than 200 yards from this corridor, this is the best version of it for me as a user of it in every mode, as a pedestrian, and particularly now as parent of a 12-year-old pedestrian who, with his merry band of middle school kids, is roving the corridor at will. I feel much safer with them out there on foot. It certainly, as a patron of just about every one of the restaurants on the corridor, it's just a better place to be, and creates a vitality, and particularly in a densifying community. You know, what we've experienced is that the contours of what we traditionally thought of downtown have expanded, and so I think we can see a lot of the business activity really producing dividends in the years ahead. And then even as a motorist, it's much more predictable now. One of the 2 Hondas I totaled in this town was on Prince Avenue at the intersection with Meggs, when somebody tried to cut across 2 lanes of traffic and T-boned me. And so I'm glad not to have the repeat of that experience, given the optimal visibility that you have in the current configuration. So very happy with the work that's happened, and looking forward to the road ahead, no pun intended. All right, speaking of traffic safety improvements, item 14 is a set of improvements that are outlined in the agenda report. Any questions about those?
Consent.
Is everybody okay with that on consent? All right, 14, you heard it here first, is heading to consent.
I guess to Commissioner Culpepper's point before, are we able to move stuff to consent even though we lack a quorum?
We are. I mean, this is a agenda setting meeting. I'm moving to consent, and if somebody wants to pull it from consent at the voting meeting, that's an opportunity that will always exist. 15 is the Middle Laconia East Trunk Improvement Project. So this is extension of a recently initiated trunk line for our public sewer system. What happens is you get more activity, you get more people. That's a good thing for the vitality of the community, but it means we need some bigger pipes, and so this is the plan for those bigger pipes. Consent. All right. 15 is consent as well. All right, 16 is an expansion of the lease with the current leaseholder at the Taylor Grady House. In the initial iteration of their lease, they had everything but the basement level, with the prospect that there may be some other ACC use, and facilities folks have recognized that in isolation, that basement level doesn't provide any support, and so it benefits the current operation to have sort of the full breadth of the house, including the basement. And this also includes the ability basically to get to better restrooms for all users, including those who might have disabilities and mobility issues.
Consent?
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, consent, please.
Consent?
Yes.
All right, 16 is consent. All right, 17 involves our juvenile court. We've been, just as the population grows, seeing an increase in use of all of our courts. And so we already had moved the second juvenile court position to one that had greater number of hours per week, and that happened a couple of years ago, and this moves it fully to a full-time position, so we'd have full-time juvenile court judges.
So is this something, so it's never have been a full-time position, is that what you're saying, Mayor?
I believe in its most recent iteration, it was an 80% position, and now it's 100%. It would be a 100% position under this.
Caseload.
Yeah, caseload. Any other questions? And just as a bit of logistics for the public, the juvenile court judges work for the Superior Court judges, and they serve similarly in the entire Western Circuit, so Clarke and Oconee County together. Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I mean, where my concern that I'm about to express is maybe more relevant is to 18 than 17, but, at the last meeting, we had this conversation. I believe it was you, Mayor, who said that last meeting, those two agenda items that were extremely similar would be the last two such items we get from the courts, and we were done kind of doing this every month, a couple of ad hoc salary adjustment items, and so these, like so many others, like every other one that's come through, I mean, they're logical, sensible requests, I think, but it just begs the question yet again, like, why are we continuing to get these month after month? Is there actually going to be a month that it stops? That sort of thing.
Well, and I'll speak to 17 and 18 in tandem around this, what you might think of as off-cycle request. I've made it clear to the courts when the last two came through that, we need to get on a regular cadence. And so my anticipation is that there is one touch point in the spring for those positions that are on a fiscal year, and that there's another touch point in the autumn for those positions that are on a calendar year. The Superior Court judges, of course, independently elected people, and so, they have the opportunity to make requests to this body. And so they brought that forth. But again, I think they do understand that the anticipation is in spring of 2025, we'll have a point when some positions are modified, and then similarly in fall of 25.
I guess what I'm curious about, though, is why these keep coming through separately. Like, why do they keep noticing, oh, this one's off, oh, this one's off? Like, what's happening that there isn't a comprehensive
We can get some response from the court administrator on that.
Mm-hmm. I think that would be helpful to understand.
Yeah, I like to leave off.
Again, I'm supportive of these requests. It's just I'm recognizing that this keeps happening, and we keep saying it won't happen anymore, and then it keeps happening again.
And especially with 18, Mayor. So, they paid by the state. They're on state benefits, from what I understand, and I'm assuming they get a pay raise when the state gets a pay raise.
Generally, they do. And
Okay.
again, some of these positions are historically those that are co-funded,
Right.
not unlike library positions, for
Right.
example.
So, to my colleagues, Commissioner Hu's point, I want to leave out consent, because I just got some questions that I
And
need to
if
have
you'd like
answered.
the court administrator to be here at the voting meeting, by all means, we'll let them know.
Yeah.
We can certainly do that.
And just so that, enlighten me. I mean, because, we're saying we're trying to keep up, trying to be equitable when it comes to pay. But if they're getting pay raises from the state and then getting raises from us, it's, it seems like it's, to me, like a little bit like it's double dipping. But again, I just want to ask the question.
Okay.
Now, and like that, I mean, I'm in support of them. I just want to know how we make this work right. So.
Anything else on 17 or 18? We've sort of combined conversation about them. All right, moving on to 19. 19 is the Athens-Clarke County Coordinated Refuge Plan. Of course, we've talked a lot about emergency management in recent months. And you might remember a couple of years ago, we even provided some temporary shelter at Lay Park. And so we're sort of wanting to formalize things rather than have them be a little more ad hoc. So start with Commissioner Culpepper.
Yeah, I would just like to maybe change the name of it to the Coordinated Emergency Shelter Plan. I kind of feel like the name might be misleading, the title of it.
Can certainly do that. We actually had the conversation today, Chief Moss and I. He agrees.
I've got Commissioner Link and then Commissioner Thornton.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see this move forward, because we certainly are facing, with climate change and climate crisis, we're facing weird deep freezes and hurricanes. If Hurricane Helene had tracked, a couple dozen miles westward, we'd be in a really different situation to this day. And from what I understand, there were plenty of unhoused people that lost their lives in that hurricane because they did not have shelter. So I'm really happy to see this, and I hope fewer and fewer people need these kind of accommodations.
Commissioner Thornton.
Yes, I'm totally in agreement with this. Actually, I was going to send an email out. Because we always wait to the last minute kind of to figure out what we're going to do when the cold hits. So I was planning to send an email out actually this week asking did we have a warming shelter plan or yeah, so this does that.
Yes, ma'am.
And I do agree. I think changing the name would clear up a lot of misconception, or some misconceptions. Some people never get cleared up, so.
Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, so I had sent some questions to staff beforehand, and instead of just pretending like I'm asking for the first time here, I'll try to paraphrase, but I invite staff to chime in. So, I'd asked about what coordination had existed, what communication had existed with CCSD in the development of this plan, and then also with UGA, noting that CCSD isn't mentioned anywhere in here, and UGA is only mentioned once on page 18, where it says that a potential site could be Stegman Coliseum. And my understanding basically is that somehow, some way, I don't know how many times, I don't know what way, staff reached out to both of those entities and they both declined to be involved. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, and I don't know what, if decline means we don't want to be a part of it. Maybe I don't know the full story.
Well, if colleagues share an interest in this, I mean, those are two huge entities with plenty of facilities that would be very useful, I think, for this sort of a plan. And I think if, a coordinated plan, a coordinated emergency plan, we'd be doing well to coordinate to some degree with those agencies. And if that doesn't look like them lending access to their facilities in any circumstances, I think at least understanding how we're communicating with them in these situations would be crucial. So I would ask for some more information on that. And
So just the
I'd
particulars
invite
of that
colleagues to let me
engagement.
know if they agree, but, this may evolve well after I'm gone, so it's a moot point, I guess, unless other colleagues agree.
No, I do agree. There's this image of us, and when I say us, the government, CCSD, and university of collaboration. And actually, we're normally the only ones collaborating or trying to bring resources to the table. And we saw that with the ARPA funding. I would like to pull this off of the agenda and put on, and so we can get some clarity, because it says Athens-Clarke County Coordinated, that word may be just a misuse of words if everything is going to fall on us. Now, I do have a question. since this is, and I don't know who talked to who, and they weren't interested, Mayor, but is it out of the realm for any of the commissioners to talk to any of the board members ourselves that we have a relationship with, or leave that up to management?
Well, I mean, certainly talking to sort of counterparts in the policymaking realm, I think is fine. What I think would be ideal is to get some clarity on what the engagement has been up to this point. So, Manager Jones, maybe just to summarize what that interaction has been like with our public sector counterparts. I don't know what that might have been like, and so I certainly wouldn't want to go to the board chair, for example, without having good information first. And so I would want some depth of knowledge about that first.
So if you would allow me to reach out to my counterparts at both school district and UGA, and I'll come up with something.
But you'll come back
I'll come up with something in writing.
vote, before that December vote.
Correct. I'll send you all an email on what I've found out, and I can get a summary from our staff too. And I'm sure that the term decline is not inaccurate, but I just don't know what the context is.
Well, surely if they are watching this tonight, they will know our concern, so go for it.
Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, we want to collaborate. We want to know what they want to do. And I guess to that end, when we had discussed a few months ago the other related plan here that was more directly regarding FEMA and aid and funding. We also talked about what I think is now being called the Local Emergency Operations Plan. So if this is the shelter plan, there's a separate one for operations. My understanding is that one's still in draft form, and it's probably going to be a few months behind this one. So obviously that is what it is, but I think some updates on that, which I believe is what we asked for in what we passed at that meeting, an update on the status of that and the draft being shared with everyone, I think would be good. And just like with the emergency shelter plan, I think it would be good to be coordinating with CCSD and UGA, however much they are willing on the operations plan.
And Commissioner Houle, I think most of you know, if you haven't seen it, I did share the draft recently with y'all. And you're right that the plan we don't foresee being completed within the next 3 or 4 months. But the draft is going well. We've got a steering committee together. We're kind of working through things. Certainly can share the list of the folks on the steering committee with you as well.
Quick question.
Commissioner Fisher?
I know we was gonna post a position. Have we posted that position yet?
The EMA coordinator?
Yeah.
It's actually filled.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because, I'm still in favor of making that a director. I think a city this size, we need to have a director of emergency management. I was in Augusta last week, and of course, they still trying to clean up from the hurricane, and I talked a little bit about our counterparts, and they talked about part, and of course, they got a director of emergency management. I think it behooves us to, as we move forward in the future, to really consider that.
Certainly, and Commissioner Houle, I don't know what this does for your question prior, for the shelter plan, but in the local emergency operations plan, CCSD and UGA are part of that. They are at the table. So, why they chose not to be part of the other plan, I can certainly find out.
Commissioner Thornton?
Are the only, and I guess I should know this, but are the only partners that, what am I trying to say? Are faith-based groups even consideration? Do we have any kind of commitment or who or whatever as faith-based groups?
For the shelter plan?
Yeah.
Sure. And
that have committed to be a part of the plan.
So if y'all remember, the Christmas 2 years ago where it was really, really cold, and we actually opened the shelter, what kind of kicked off this initiative, if you will, we were relying on the churches, the local churches to assist, because that's what they'd done for years. Yes, they are part of this plan, the shelter plan, but what we've done is ensure that, we kind of understand the tiering system, when we would activate certain groups, what the temperatures are that's going to activate certain things. So it's just a more coordinated approach, and it's just not the churches by themselves.
All right, some more information forthcoming. All right, now, item 20 is the intergovernmental agreement with the Athens-Clarke County / Winterville Joint Development Authority. You might remember that we've allocated them some funds to provide grants to small businesses at low interest rates, and so this is sort of the underlying IGA that allows that work to continue. Questions? It's title only at this point.
I'm sorry, yeah.
We don't have the draft yet. All right, item 21 is the resolution that I know community groups have contacted commissioners about regarding the ranked choice voting in local elections. This would eliminate the need for runoff elections with local elections if the state would allow localities to do this. I know several folks here behind the rail have been involved in runoff elections themselves. One of the phenomenon is that when you have to run a second election for an election cycle, here in a community of our size, you spend tens of thousands of dollars every time you have to do that. And so this is a step toward eliminating the amount of money that has to be spent out at those polling places by having a single visit rather than multiple visits. So, Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I mean, as someone who was in one of those runoff elections, my first run for office, yeah, it's brutal, and you get a huge drop-off in voter participation, which is never good for democracy. Of course, this is just us agreeing to appeal to our state legislators to act on the state level to allow us to do something like this if we so choose, and to allow other municipalities to possibly do it as well. Just merely for our local elections. We have nonpartisan local elections, so if you get more than 2 people running for the same office, there's a really good chance you're going to end up with a runoff. So I think this is just merely a pragmatic and financial good idea.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I like the concept, but I think there's some more questions that I have from perspective. We can't make the decision locally to do this. Am I
That's right.
correct?
The state would have to enable
Right.
this through statute.
And then where do our Board of Elections come in at? I mean, should they have an opportunity to maybe take a look at this? Because again, this is something that I'm really not, what kind of recommendation we get from them. So I would like for them to maybe take a look at this and get some feedback from them and just give us some thought process. You're right, we can save a lot of money, and I get that piece, but I think we need to let them vet it. So I would like to pull till we get, take it off consent.
Let's see, Commissioner Hool.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate Commissioner Fisher's wanting to get other folks' input on this. I do just want to note, if people haven't had a chance to really read through this, I think the whereas clauses make a pretty great argument for why this makes sense fiscally and in terms of better participation in the outcomes of our elections. But I do want to underscore, I know Commissioner Link spoke to this, that this would just be us requesting of the state government that they pass legislation that would allow communities to have ranked choice voting on their local elections. And then we would have another conversation. If and when that occurs, we would then have to consider whether we wanted to actually do that. So the actual getting to the point of doing that is a thing that would come later if and when the state government chooses to agree with us making this ask. And we're not the only community in the state or in the country that's doing this. So I say all that to say, if we don't have a chance, say, to communicate with all the other folks who would be affected by this, we can still, I think, move forward with this, because this is really just a request from us as a body about what we'd like to see the state government do. Those other parties can do that as well or not. The decision around whether we actually set up the ranked choice voting system here would be a conversation we'd have if we got there. And there has been legislation proposed in the state legislature on this that I think has had some amount of bipartisan support in the past that just hasn't been enacted yet.
I think it may have passed one of the 2 houses in the last couple of years, but not the other. Didn't make it across. So, Commissioner Thornton.
Actually, this is deja vu for me. In the 90s, when I was with another grassroots nonprofit, this was one of the initiatives that I worked on. it died, but it's still a good idea. I totally think this is the way we need to go. I'm going to agree with Commissioner Fisher, because I do know that two other commissioners who are not here right now wanted a better understanding. So I think that, and I'm going to say this about 21 and 22. And it goes back to Commissioner Hull's point when we were talking about the new judges, and this keeps coming back. We have talked about how we want to have resolutions move through a process. And this keeps coming back with any resolution. So I'm going to agree with Commissioner Hull, Commissioner Fisher, but I do hope as we go into 2025 that we have a process of how we handle resolutions, especially when we've built in and invested in committees and departments to handle these kind of things, or give us a formal, I don't have to go and research ranked choice voting because I know, but I am willing to work in communities and especially communities that are not actively involved, because this is something that I think could really fire people up and getting politically involved. And I did volunteer to set up some focus groups if this is, if we move forward on this. But I'm okay with
Board of Election. Yeah, I just think we need to get their opinion and just get some. They're the experts. Great, I understand that it has to go through leisure, but I just think we need to figure out how they feel about it, or what they think and what their opinion is. So, in my mind, so.
Commissioner Culpepper?
I agree with Commissioner Thornton. I mean, I feel like this was it was talked about a couple of weeks ago, and all of a sudden it shows up on the agenda. It hadn't been through LRC or GOC or anything. And I feel like we need to have a process because, a resolution really isn't binding. All it is kind of an opinion. And so we don't have a whole lot of information. It just all of a sudden popped up. And I think we've got to find out, we need to figure out if we're going to pass resolutions, are they going to have teeth or what? There really aren't anything. It's just an opinion of the current sitting government. And I think we need to have more answers about the effects of what the Board of Elections feel, and probably ought to talk to some of our state reps and see what their thought are, because no matter what we do, it's still got to pass on the state level. We're asking staff to do a lot of work for something that's really just our opinion. And I think we can be better used. We've got a lot of things we got to tackle. And just to have them do all this research just for an opinion, I don't know if that's the best use of time.
Commissioner Hull? No, I just note, kind of within the space of operational democracy, this is a pretty well kind of vetted process, and I know that those community advocates that have been engaging with commissioners, have a wealth of data, and so I'll ensure that they get together some repository of that so everybody has access to it.
I actually did go to the CNA with you, and it just excited me again to see that presentation after so many years. So I definitely support it, but I want to do more of educating folk on the front end, and I think we should try, and I think going through a process helps us to do that.
Commissioner Hull.
I just wanted to address some concerns raised up by colleagues and just note that, revisiting the process for how these get generated to end up on an agenda is certainly a thing everyone's welcome to do. Absent a different process, this arrived here by the one we've got, which is if enough people express interest and the mayor feels inclined to put it on the agenda, which is kind of how anything has gotten on our agenda for the entire existence of the unified government. So, I think a better process for the commission having a clear idea of how to participate in generating or bringing forth their own resolutions would be great. But I would hate to not do anything until we have hammered that out and whatever committee hammers that out. And as far as what this resolution would do, I think Commissioner Culpepper is correct. It's just a statement of opinion, but it's a formal way to state our opinion to the state legislature and ask them to grant us the ability to do something on the local level. So this is the way that we as a body can make that ask, and I don't think this asks anything of staff really until and unless the state legislature chooses to pass a law like this one is asking for, at which point then, probably goes through some kind of committee to discuss whether we want to actually, participate ourselves on the local level.
Well, I totally agree with that, and I don't think that we're saying anything different. I'm just bringing to the attention the same way you brought up about the judges. We keep talking about it, but we don't develop and then we're back to a resolution. So I'm only agreeing right now is I think Commissioner Fisher just said he was not going to put it on consensus that it wanted to pull it. So how much more information we get between now and December, I think that will make all of us feel a little, like I said, I'm 100% on board. And, but I want to make sure my colleagues are also 100% on board. We should be able, every time we make a vote, whether it's a up vote or down vote, or it's a popular vote or unpopular vote, we should be able to explain why we voted.
All right, item 22 is another resolution I placed on the agenda in my role as agenda setter, and this supports the LGBTQIA plus community. It's been under draft for many months, and draft was finalized in time for this agenda, and so I'm very glad to see it here. Commissioner Link.
Yeah, I would love to see this go on consent. I think that we need to make a loud and clear statement supporting in particular, LGBTQIA community, in light of the recent national election and the rhetoric that was coming out of that election, deliberately targeting trans people in particular. That we are a nation that supposedly reveres freedom, and to attack that community is an affront to that. We also have had a recent murder of a member of that community, and I have not gotten any response to requests for information on that investigation. It barely made a dent in the news. I'm hoping we can get some more information on that, but it's clear that particularly members of our trans community are not valued as much as others, and that's wrong. And I feel like we need to do more than just pass a resolution. We need to make it loud and clear that there is equality in the diversity of this community.
Commissioner Link, if I might, I have talked to Chief Salters about the response, and we can't respond right now because there's an ongoing investigation, but we will put something together for you as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people in the community that would like to know that that incident is being taken seriously and that life will be honored.
Commissioner Culpepper?
Yes, I do not want this on consent. I feel like this is a redundant resolution. We've got it used to be the inclusionary office, now it's the people and belonging department. And I was looking at their website today, and some of the comments, we believe that everyone, no matter who they are, deserves fair opportunities and a community that supports them. We're passionate about creating a place for everyone. We tackle barriers that prevent people from feeling included and educate others about why. And that's from the director, Remy Epps. From their mission, it's to cultivate an exclusive, equitable, and supportive community by embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion principles. In their vision, our goal is to create an environment where diversity is celebrated, all voices are heard, and every person has equal access to opportunity. So I feel like we have created this department. Their budget for 2025 was $751,000. We gave them an increase of 64%, which was $294,000, and added an additional person. So why are we doing a resolution when a resolution is what we just talked about earlier? It's just an opinion. It's not an action. We've created this department to handle this. So is the department not doing what they need to be doing? Maybe that's where there needs to be some accountability. But I think, once again, I don't agree with a resolution.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yes, I'm wanting to know, did this go through the Human Relations Council? That's why we created the Human Relations Council. So I don't know whether or not it went through them to have that conversation. And let me say this, I support our community, but as a black man in this country, have been called the N-word, called all kinds of things. If we're going to create a resolution, and we include people what I call all protected groups, I think it's difficult. And I'm an idea. We're going to talk about a resolution about this community and what we want Athens to be like. I've been here over 40 years, love this community. Don't want to live anywhere else. But I know what the reality is about being a black man and what it can mean sometimes. I can leave here tonight, and who knows what can happen if I get stopped. Because I know I have to put my hands on the steering wheel. I'm reaching for my license. Those are reality in our lives. So I just want to say that and be, and think about, how we want to look at that and what we want to say about what our community means and how we want to be inclusive of everybody.
Commissioner Davenport.
Yes, I didn't think this was going to be this much of an issue, but yeah, I support this resolution. So we do have the inclusion office where people belong in now, but that was created years ago to address umbrella of issues when it comes to discrimination and minority issues in Athens. As it was stated, a resolution is a statement just from this body. And I believe, and I hope, and I pray, even as a Christian man, I love all of God's kids, that we show respect to the LGBTQIA community by passing this resolution. Now, if there are other marginalized groups out there who feels that they need a resolution, please bring it forward. This is, I will support something for black people, as I'm black myself, born and raised in this town. I do feel discriminated against, and if the Mocha Jasmine Johnson group, what is it called, the anti-discrimination movement wants to bring a resolution, it is their right and their choice to do so, to address black needs and minority needs. But there's a group of people in this community who feel marginalized, who feel uncomfortable. Say what you want, but as a body, I want everybody to know that I want everybody to feel safe in this community, and passing a resolution is a great way to show that this body, the 10 commissioners, mayors, support those individuals. And then if we have any other future issues or any concerns that we have, we can address it as a body through LRC or GOC through the People and Belongings Department.
Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate and resonate with, agree with Commissioner Davenport's remarks there. For full transparency to colleagues, I helped write this resolution in collaboration with a number of folks who are very active in the community, doing things outside of this body, outside of the government, with Athens Pride and Queer Collective and a host of other organizations. These hit our agenda, after many of the other items, and they, these being this and the previous resolution. So I understand that maybe everybody hasn't had a time to read through all of it. People spoke at the podium tonight about a lot of things. I thought it was indicative of the importance of this, both for the folks who showed up to share their stories and their rationale for why they think it's important, and also for the large number of folks who showed up for something else and then realizing this was here, hearing it was here, feeling compelled to use a portion of the limited time they had to also speak to this. And kind of the role I played with this, like I've done with some past resolutions, was trying to just do the editing, right? Get the formatting, make sure there's sources cited, yada, yada. And so when we're pointing to numbers that aren't our own ACC Gov numbers, I think it's important to get a source. And I'll be honest, a lot of folks here spoke to the fear that they are experiencing. And I can definitely relate to that as well. It's been, I've been going back and forth about how much do I want to spend time talking about this in the meeting because, well, how many death threats am I going to get again? Like I did a few months ago when I had to shut down all my social media, and plenty of people, plenty of these wild podcasts and YouTube programs that we hear about mentioning my name all of a sudden, things I wouldn't have expected, There's a weird way that these things can spin off, especially when you have national figures citing your town and national figures focusing on this group, the LGBTQIA plus community, and especially trans people. And I do want to point people to two paragraphs. It's the second and third whereas clauses in this resolution, because I do think it underscores why we are at an important time where this is especially important to point to. And I also want to certainly back up, although I won't be here for it for future agenda cycles, but Commissioner Davenport's assertion that, it's valuable to say more as well. But it says, whereas the trans community has been particularly targeted in the recent presidential election by national campaign groups spending nearly $40 million on anti-trans advertising, which is more than those same groups spent on ads addressing housing, immigration, and the economy combined. So I'll pause for a second and just note that poll after poll shows that economy is the number one issue for people in the country. Number two, usually for people in the country, is immigration. We all know, of course, housing's very important here, and I think housing often gets lumped in with the economy, but I'm sure those are probably the big three right now. In America and here in Athens, not a lot of people maybe are saying trans rights are, top of the mind for me. And yet we saw a campaign who's now about to be the incoming administration spend more money on this than all three of those issues combined. And those were some ugly ads. And, I think a lot about the things we've heard about, you hesitate to use the word fascism, but certainly scary movements that have happened in other countries around the world in the past. And that old quote, first they came for such and such, and then they came for such and such. And by the time they came for me, there was nobody left. And I think what we're about to see with this new administration is first they will come for immigrants, especially undocumented immigrants or recent immigrants who came here legally but under some special refugee status. And then if we believe them, and I try to believe people when they say it, they're probably going to come for trans people. And as a member of this body who's been out as queer, out as non-binary, and had to deal with all kinds of silliness, including, and this isn't to try to start an argument, this is just to say we're all learning together, but that includes from colleagues on this body and from staff of this government. I think it would be meaningful for this body to show some solidarity here. Sure, maybe it is just words, maybe it is just opinion, but also, whereas clause number 3, the ACLU has tracked, as of November 8th, 2024, a total of 532 proposed anti-LGBTQIA plus bills across the United States in this year's legislative session alone. That's this year alone, including 14 in the Georgia state legislature. Now, it happens to be that the 14 in the Georgia state legislature didn't pass this last session, but I expect that they'll probably come back next session. And we'll see how the appetite evolves, especially with the new administration, which was supported by a majority of people in both our state House and Senate. We have anecdotal examples of horrible violence. A couple of examples we heard tonight at the podium. I appreciate Commissioner Link raising up the murder of Sang Coleman. It is telling that when a queer person of color is murdered, also on a trail, also brutally, there's very little public attention even, never mind outcry. But when a young white college student is murdered, we had the national circus that we experienced. Both of those murders are horrible and tragic, but I think the discrepancy in response is indicative of the seriousness with which this society and this community, our community, takes violence against people who this community, our community, has plenty of members of who will say folks like this aren't worth as much, aren't human, aren't real, are mentally ill. I mean, there's all kinds of terrible characterizations I'm not going to spend my time trying to say for other people, but I've heard plenty of them. I've received them in my inbox, accompanied with death threats to my family, noting my address. So this would be meaningful, just words are not. And I know that there's only 6 of us here today. That's enough to pass it, you know? So I do implore my colleagues to take seriously the value in this. And I appreciate Commissioner Culpepper mentioning some language that is already put forth by many of our departments. A lot of that is quoted in this resolution, and a lot of this is just us reaffirming what we believe in and what our staff is already doing, good work our staff is already doing, while also making a couple of new commitments, one of which is to encourage our law enforcement and public safety officials to undergo training to address the concerns of LGBTQIA plus community with sensitivity and competence. And that is something that is not happening yet, that this would get the ball rolling on perhaps. So when we think about who's going to take those crimes seriously and who's going to interact with people when they're pulled over, like my colleague Commissioner Fisher was talking about, or when they're walking down the street looking some kind of way that someone might have some kind of attitude about, it's those public safety officials whose paychecks we write, and they may do well to get some training, because I've heard plenty of stories that I'm not going to bother expounding on the details of, about all kinds of things that make clear that our public safety officials would benefit from that training. So, yeah, you know, please, you know, on my last cycle with y'all, my last month on this commission with y'all, consider that whatever procedural changes need to come to make resolutions happen in a way that feels better for this body, and I can agree that there's some work to do there. Don't let those procedural changes get in the way of moving forward on this. As I recall someone at the podium saying, it may well mean life and death for some people in our community, and I'm not saying that to be hyperbolic.
Commissioner Thorne?
I remember, and it's been a minute ago, Danielle came before this commission. I want to say it was even before the new commissioners came on, and then we didn't hear anything else. But Commissioner Hull's acknowledgement that he helped or edited this resolution is even more reason we need to have a process. You know, it's not too many things that I do or spring up and surprise folk. And usually Commissioner Hull is very keeping us ahead of the game, you know, letting us know what he's working on. I really would have appreciated and that knowing his involvement, but that's and this is my example. This commission doesn't talk with each other. We talk around and about because we don't have a process. So if we all were talking together, that would put us so much closer on the same page. But it just seems that we all take our own little issue, and that's not a little issue, that's a big issue. And we just work in our own vacuums. So it's even more important to have a process. And I'm not suggesting before you leave that I'm not considering supporting it. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that it's a good example why things don't get done or things go in a circle. I'm not saying, oh, we're going to have a process before we look at this resolution. I'm not saying that. Maybe that'd be a nice goodbye present for you. But I'm okay with pulling it and making sure I understand what I am, whoever recommended, I don't know who it was, but we've got to do better with our communications, even though we're different. And I really would have appreciated knowing this was something you were championing before tonight.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I just want to point out that just a couple years ago, the state of Tennessee, right over the border, effectively made being transgender illegal by prohibiting the wearing of opposite sex clothing anywhere where children might be present. That got stopped by the courts. It effectively outlawed the putting on a bunch of Shakespeare's plays in the presence of children. This is serious stuff. I mean, our own Georgia legislature has tried to pass some of these laws. We are on the cusp of making it illegal for people to exist as their true selves. I think it's more important than ever that we pass this immediately. And this whole resolution process exists for meeting these kinds of moments in a timely manner. We don't have time to go through months and months of committee meetings and debate. Of course, being a resolution, it's non-binding, but it is a statement that this local government supports this community and supports freedom and will back the safety of these individuals who are legitimately threatened. The folks who stood up at this mic tonight, who knows what kind of threats can come to them. It took a lot of bravery for them to go on camera and state their names and addresses. Because I'm sure there are plenty of folks out there who would not do that for fear of the retaliation that is happening all over this country and is being directed by someone who is about to be the President of the United States again and is backed by tens of millions of voters who feel the same way he does. So it is our duty to protect the people of this community and to stand up for them and to stand up for love in all its forms.
Just note sort of as a global matter, one of our key roles as a policymaking body is safety of the 135,000 people within our 120 square miles. And that's true every day, all day, but it's particularly true when we have some of the inflection points that we've had in our time as policymakers. It was true in 2019 when there were mass murders of immigrants who were specifically targeted because they were immigrant individuals, and so we passed a resolution recognizing that inflection point. And it was true in 2020 after a very long sequence of deaths of Black Americans at the hands of law enforcement officers, and we passed a Black Lives Matter resolution that I'm proud to say ended up having some really tangible outgrowths in that we put money into researching the poisoning of people's drinking water that they've finally gotten resolution around. So these things can have tangible impacts, and we are at an inflection point around the LGBTQIA plus community that includes people who've been my teachers and mentors and colleagues in the workplace, and neighbors and friends and family members who I love as much as anyone, and most of all, many, many children who I've taught in the 20 years I spent in classrooms and hallways in this community, and I want to see them know that they're valued and know that they are in a safe community.
Now, Kelly, we understand now that I did not say I was against this resolution. We got that right?
That's
I'm
on the
just
record.
talking, and so I did not say that we needed a process in writing before the resolution. I didn't say that. I'm saying whatever happens with this resolution next month, whatever happens with this resolution next month, that we got to have a process as we move forward. That was my point.
All right.
Mayor.
Commissioner Davenport.
I would love to adjourn.
Commissioner Hoare.
Yeah, just, because I was mentioned specifically by a colleague's comments, I'm going to do my best to direct them to the mayor, but I do want to remind everyone, we have long meetings. This is another one. But we've had folks come to us about both this and the previous issue, ranked choice voting and trans or an LGBTQIA plus resolution at past meetings. I have spoken in support of what they've asked about in those meetings. I have said I'd be willing to work with them or colleagues to write something, and that I'd be willing to work with colleagues who were interested. And I worked with the folks who were interested. So I apologize if it seemed like a surprise. I'm not sure why it would seem like a surprise, given that I've said it before and that I am an LGBTQIA plus member who's been out since I ran, and certainly the whole time I've been on here. And I just because I've bit my tongue for 4 years, but I'll go ahead and say it in a meeting finally. My pronouns are they, them, and I've heard. Thanks. It's just what it is. But appreciate it. I've said this to each colleague here. It's been written in multiple emails by me and other colleagues. I've heard colleagues on this body in meetings lean over and remind other colleagues of that. And I don't know how many times I've heard all kinds of wild things about why my pronouns are just some kind of BS in the minds of some people, including, I think, some people on this body. And even if that isn't how someone feels, that's how it comes across every time someone says, Commissioner Houle, he, even when they've been reminded in that same meeting. And that's happened plenty. So I don't think we need to get into petty arguments with each other about whose identities matter more. I think we just need to stand up for each other, because all of our identities matter. What it means to support diversity is to support each other's differences. And when someone who's about to become president of the United States is specifically attacking specific differences, and their campaign is spending more money on those differences than anything else that they campaigned on, including all the things that poll after poll says we all care about more, maybe now's the time to say something. God forbid we express our opinion. If this is our opinion, if everybody behind this rail really feels this way, it shouldn't be hard to just say aye and say it's our opinion and move on. I mean, honestly, if everyone just said nothing or that, I wouldn't be saying anything else right now. You better believe there's going to be at least as many people at the podium on December 3rd now. Nobody liked being here for hours. It was nice to hear so much support, but we're hungry, we're tired, right? So if it's really so easy if it's really just our opinion, then just say you support it and let's move on. And, maybe take seriously that if you're not always getting everything right, you could listen to a colleague from once in a while, Golly.
Commissioner Davenport, I believe you had a motion.
Yes, there are bugs over here, so I'm ready to
call it.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.